Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris, and I am an alcoholic. It's really a pleasure to be here. This is such a wonderful piece of country. We got the opportunity this afternoon to go out on a boat and explore the area. And I've got to tell you, this is really idyllic up here. It's an amazing place. And I'm grateful to be asked to come up here. I want to thank Willie for tracking us down and asking us to come up here. Willie's my kind of guy. Just a few minutes ago, he asked me, "You thirsty? You want anything?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like a Diet Coke." So he brings me a six-pack. I mean, I love that. Definitely one of us. Okay, my topic tonight is cunning, baffling, and powerful. That's the topic. And what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about alcoholism, a little bit about the problem, a little bit about the solution that was discovered basically by the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous and what that solution was. And with all of this, I want to weave in a little bit of my own personal story because I think it's important to qualify. I think you all need to understand that there's an alcoholic behind these microphones, and you'll probably be sure of that after this next hour. Anyway, alcoholism has been around since they discovered that you could ferment grain and crush grapes. Alcoholism, I believe today, in the science that's being done, I believe that alcoholism is more genetic than it is causal. What I mean by that is, yes, I think that some people can drink their way into alcoholism, but I believe more strongly in the fact that some of us are genetically predisposed to become alcoholics. I even believe that we're alcoholics, before we take a drink. There's something bodily and mentally different with us than other people. And this has been true for, thousands and thousands of years. You can find references to alcoholism in the Bible. It's in the Roman writings from many thousands of years ago. So I believe that it's been around, and most of the time in the history of alcohol and alcoholism, most of the time alcoholics died. And they really very rarely found a path to sobriety that would work for them. And the reason for that is this, that if you're alcoholic, what happens is you drink past the point of being able to stop on your own before you really want to stop. You've passed the point of no return on your own aid, on your own power, before you even really want to quit. And that's what's happened over the course of time. Now, in the last 300 or 400 years, they've taken alcoholism very seriously in different parts of the world. And if you want to get a little bit of an education on the treatment of alcoholism in the last 400 or 500 years, a man named Bill White wrote a wonderful book. It's called Slaying the Dragon, and it has to do with the different variations of treatment of ways and means to get people like us sober. And it's very, very interesting that there were periods of time in our past where they would do things like inject us with heavy metals. There was the Keeley Gold Cure, in the 1800s, and I can't imagine injecting heavy metals into somebody is going to help their alcoholism, but they swore that it worked, and Keeley Institutes popped up all over the place. There were periods of time in Europe where probably the most horrific was they realized that no matter what happened and no matter how many times they got an alcoholic sober, they were going to drink almost the next opportunity they had. So they would literally lock you up into these things. They looked like mummy sarcophaguses, and you would just be locked up in there, and they would just feed you from one door and, clean it out from another. And you literally were put in these things for life. So you're trapped in these things for life. There was times in the not too distant past where if you continued to drink alcoholically and cause trouble in society, the treatment / punishment that they would give you would be to pour molten lead down your throat. I'll tell you, that would get your attention. But if you were a real alcoholic and you survived that, you'd be drinking pretty soon anyway. I mean, the problem with alcoholism is you can't scare us sober. You can't teach us sober. You can't motivate us sober. What has to happen is we have to become willing to change the way we operate and start to practice spiritual principles and learn how to live spiritually. It's more about actions than it is about understanding. And alcoholism is an unorthodox illness. I don't call it a disease. The American Medical Association calls it a disease, so that's pretty telling. But there's still some controversy about is alcoholism a disease or not. So I don't say that it is, but I do say that it's an illness because the book Alcoholics Anonymous talks about alcoholism as an illness. And it's an unorthodox illness. It presents in many different ways. It presents certainly in people getting drunk out of their minds and causing all trouble and, blackout bender drinking. That's one symptom of alcoholism. But it also presents in a myriad of other ways. And a lot of these are misunderstood. When you put an alcoholic in front of a psychiatrist or you put an alcoholic in front of a medical doctor, it's very, very difficult for them to really see what the real problem is. They're seeing symptoms. The wonderful thing about Bill Wilson and the early alcoholics is they understood the underlying causes and conditions of alcoholism. And some of those have to do with our perception. Now, alcoholism presents as getting drunk out of your mind. How it presented to me was like this. I'll explain what any particular day in the last 4 or 5 years of my drinking. I would come to in the morning, wearing the clothes I had on the night before, stinking of vodka if it was the summer or bourbon if it was the winter, because I did that. I had seasonal alcoholic beverages. But I would be reeking because I drank so much the night before, and I'd be shattered. Listen, as alcoholics, we think we have hangovers. I am telling you, we have a lot worse than hangovers. We actually have alcohol poisoning because the alcoholic is compelled to drink until they pass out. Well, if you drink that much, you've got alcohol poisoning. You've taken alcohol, put it into your system to such a point that your body just shuts down, and it's really bad for the physical body to drink that much, and it's considered alcohol poisoning at that point. So I would come to in the morning with alcohol poisoning. I'm not going to call it a hangover, but I'm shattered, and I'd stagger into the bathroom, and do my vomiting calisthenics, this is a work morning, and I'd throw some water on my face and I'd stagger out to my $100 car, and I'd drive to work to my bad job where I'm a bad electrician. I'm continuously blowing things up, and my boss hates me, and I'm just really, I show up. I can't remember what you told me to do, but I'm here. And I'm driving to work, and the whole way I'm driving to work, I'm going, oh, God, I feel terrible. Oh, today, I swear, today is the day where I'm going to stop drinking. I can't feel this bad anymore. This is terrible. Tonight I'm not going to drink, and, I'm going to give this up. I got to stop drinking. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. And I'd get to work, and I'd screw something up or go to the wrong job or, wire the wrong house, or something. But the whole day, I would be swearing that, the whole morning, I'm not going to do this again. Today, I'm going to quit drinking. And if you would have taken a lie detector and hooked it up to me and asked me, Chris, are you ever going to drink again? I would say, no, I'm not. And the needle, the polygraph needle would go right to true. This guy's telling the truth. I meant it. I am going to quit today. But what would happen is I'd get like half a sandwich down. I'd rehydrate with a half a gallon of some kind of liquid, and it'd be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 4:30 is quitting time, and I'd start to say to myself, that decision you made this morning about never drinking again. That's a pretty strong position. That could be an overreaction, to this whole thing. And I might have to modify that decision. I might have to modify it on the way home today and stop at the liquor store, and buy some more vodka. And I would do that. And I would walk in, and you got to understand, like, I need a drink so bad. I'd walk in and I'd grab my bottle of Gordon's vodka. I knew right where it was. I made sure the liquor store never ran out of it. And I'd go up and I'd get in the line, or whatever. And every once in a while, I'd usually be able to pay really quick and get out to my car because, I am freaking out that, I need to get home and start drinking. It's like 4:30. So, and every once in a while, there'd be somebody in line, like, slowing things down. I remember this one time there was this lady, and she was asking the cashier, what kind of wine goes with tilapia? And he's going, well, how are you cooking that tilapia? And she, well, I'm braising it, well, you should have a little Chardonnay with a blush or some crap like that. I'm like, will you shut up? Will you just get that lady the hell out of here? Give her a bottle of Gallo or something. Move her on. Move her on. Don't you see? I need to buy this vodka. I got a problem here. I'm sober. And I got to buy this. Now, listen. Think about this. I went from 5 hours earlier. I would have passed a lie detector that I was never going to drink again. It's the afternoon. I'm frantic. I'm ready to knock some woman out, who's going to make tilapia, because I got to get out. I got to get home. Think about that. That's insane. I am suffering from the insanity of alcoholism. I am driven to drink. Now think about somebody that's non-alcoholic, looking at a person like me. Like, I'm telling my boss I'm never going to drink again, and I'm hammered out of my mind like 4 or 5 hours later. What do they think of us, right? Think about non-alcoholics. They cannot understand this compulsion to drink. They can't understand it. So they think we're nuts. So they put us in mental health programs and all this other stuff because we're showing up as crazy. But what this is it's an obsession of the mind. One of the wonderful things about Bill Wilson and the early alcoholics was they recognized what the problem was. The problem was an obsession of the mind coupled with an allergy or an unnatural reaction to alcohol, and then with an unmanageability quotient, which is all across the board. We're a mess all across the board, and that's what they saw alcoholism is. Like as this whole piece of business. So what happened with me was, around noon, I would start to experience the obsession of the mind. And what an obsession is it's a thought that overrides every other thought. So I could have a thought like, I'm never going to drink again. I know I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to be sick tomorrow. I think I'll go to the liquor store. And that I think I'll go to the liquor store goes to the top of the list. It goes to the head of the class. And that's the one that moves my feet. That's what an obsession of the mind is. We're not dumb people. We know that by putting alcohol in our body one more time, we're playing Russian roulette with our lives. We're not stupid, but we do it anyway. And that's part of the obsession of the mind. So Bill Wilson and the early alcoholics recognized that. Now, how do you define that psychologically? I'm not sure if you even can. But the thing is the descriptions in the book Alcoholics Anonymous are so on the money. They answer the questions. And when you try to describe this, when Carl Jung is trying to describe it, he's describing it as a crisis of faith. And, a lot of people are trying to explain this, but Bill Wilson nailed it when he said it's an obsession. We get obsessed with alcohol. We go and it doesn't matter that they're going to put us back in jail. It doesn't matter that we're going to lose our family. None of those things, none of those thoughts are at the top of the hill. The one that's at the top of the hill is, I think I'll go to the liquor store. And, that's part of the insanity of alcoholism, the strange mental blank spots that precede the first drink, the subtle form of insanity that allows us to one more time, start another binge. Now, the other part of alcoholism that Bill Wilson recognized was that once we start drinking it, we get a craving, a physiological craving. And this is how it would present in me. I would finally get past the tilapia woman, buy my vodka, get home. And I swear to God, as soon as I sat down in the car with it, I'd start to feel better. I had my bottle, you know what I mean? But when I got home and I was able to crack the lid, I'd crack the lid and I'd start pouring it in. And I'd take that first sip and it was like this. All the tension and repressed, anxiety and angst would start to flow off of me, and I would start to drink. And what would happen was the first drink would always do one thing every time, and that is it would ask for the second drink. Second drink would insist on the third drink. The third drink would demand the fourth drink. So the more alcohol in me, the more physical craving I have. And what would happen to me is in the last 4 or 5 years of my drinking, every single time I started drinking, I would get tongue-chewing, knee-walking, not able to operate my own pants zipper drunk. You ever that drunk, Doug, you can't operate your own pants zipper? That can be a concern. Anyway, that's so I've got an obsession that no matter how hard I try to stay away from alcohol, a thought's going to pop into my mind to go over to the liquor store and buy liquor and start drinking, which is real trouble. But that's not bad. That's bad enough. But I've also got a physical craving that when I put alcohol in my body, it creates an insatiable craving for more. I would come to after passing out on the floor, and I would have a gigantic glass of vodka or bourbon that I had just poured. Does anybody in here relate to that? Like, listen, I was so drunk, I was this close to passing out, and I made myself another gigantic drink, like 42 ounces of alcohol. There we go. That probably would have killed me if I drank it. Now, why would you do that? An alcoholic will do something like that. Aunt Fanny and Uncle Fudd, will have 2 or 3 glasses of wine, and they've had enough. I've had enough. You ever drink with people that have enough on you? You know what I mean? No thanks. I've had 2 already. 2? Yeah, I'm starting to feel it. You're supposed to feel it. What are you, crazy? Oh, I'll get all giddy and out of control. Well, then have 2 or 3 more and you go right from giddy and out of control to fun. Come on, let's go to the city. That's how I drank. I didn't understand these people that had enough. Had enough. Are you kidding me? What is enough? What is enough? So, So, that would happen to me every time. Now, okay, obsession of the mind, allergy of the body. We all get that. The worst part of alcoholism is a sense of overpowering sense of self. Every single alcoholic has this. It says in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, we're selfish and self-centered. That is the root of our troubles. And it is. We don't think so a lot of times, like, I'm not selfish, I lent so-and-so money to get bailed out of jail. We don't think we're selfish, but it's all about us, I'm on planet Chris, and you're all satellites orbiting around my planet, and I've got to figure out how you're going to land, because it's got to be in my best interest somehow. It's crazy. And, we're selfish and we're self-centered, and this causes a whole lot of trouble. So, putting out of my mind drink, because at times alcohol is a solution to my true alcoholism. Because my true alcoholism is that bizarre sense of self and that feeling of isolation from the world and from other people, and that sense of being alone and on my own and in a hostile universe. I mean, that really is the core of alcoholism, that sense of separation, of not being a part of or one with. So here's forget drinking. I'm talking about when I'm sober. A good day, I am restless, irritable, and discontented. I don't want to be here. I heard a speaker one time say he was backstage with the Beatles, and he just wanted to get the hell out of there. And I'm telling you, I can relate to that. Can you imagine? I don't want to be here, with Ringo, but that's the way I always felt. I always felt uncomfortable with myself and my environment. I just didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be with them. There was always something wrong with it. So I was always restless, irritable, and discontented. On a good day, a normal day, I suffered from self-centered fear and guilt and shame and remorse and anxiety. I was always just, the hairs triggered from freaking out. And, people would really stay away from me, because they just saw me as crazy, And, so I'm suffering from guilt and shame and remorse and anxiety and depression and, suicidal ideation. I don't know if anybody else in here thought about it, but practically every night when I was drinking, I was thinking about, taking myself out somehow. Do you know that alcoholics are 60 times more likely to take their own life than non-alcoholics? And listen, the life insurance actuaries understand that, I'll tell you. They make it a little bit hard sometimes for us to get life insurance. But we're not a good risk. Just terribly torn up spiritually, mentally, emotionally, just a freaking mess. That's like a normal day. A bad day is the day when the hideous four horsemen are galloping through my life. Terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So that's me sober. That's a bad day. So now being that messed up and being that uncomfortable and being that tortured by the bondage itself, that's really what alcoholism is. And I believe we become obsessed with alcohol in reaction to those feelings. Some of us have them more than others. Listen, alcoholism has a scale. No matter how far down the scale you've gone, you'll find your experience will benefit others. Your ability to drink on a non-spiritual basis will depend upon how much control in drink you've lost. That's the scale in alcoholism. The scale doesn't have to do with how many DUIs you've had, how many families you've lost, how many fights you've lost down at the bar. It doesn't have to do with any of that. It has to do with power, choice, and control. How much power, choice, and control have you lost in drink? And that's where you are on the scale. And some of us go down the scale a little further than others. And Bill Wilson is saying your ability to drink on a non-spiritual basis will depend upon where you are on that scale. Some people can quit drinking, on a non-spiritual basis. But he basically says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that the alcoholic, he calls them the real alcoholic, is going to be unable to quit on a non-spiritual basis, unable to quit on self-knowledge, unable to quit on self-motivation, and that's really us. And we're kind of in trouble if we're there. Now, the beautiful thing about Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and the whole goofy crew of the first 100. You start studying these guys, you will say, how did we ever make it? So but Bill Wilson he says he's a failed stockbroker. He wasn't a stockbroker. He was a stock shyster. He would try to talk you into buying shares, and if they go up, he'll get some of the money. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Or he tried to talk you into paying him to go check out companies. He was like the first stock analyst. But all of this was really unusual and highly unorthodox for like Wall Street. He was not thinking along party lines. And Dr. Bob was they call him a surgeon. He was a proctologist, and that's what he was. And he was a failing proctologist. Okay, he had really big hands, and he would shake a lot, right? So if you were unlucky enough to be in the stirrups, and he was coming to do some proctoring on you, he'd be like, smelling like liquor, with the big hands shaking. You would be looking for a second opinion fast. Let me tell you. Hold on, Doc. Hold on. It's better already. Miraculously. So he wasn't getting a lot of surgeries. Now these are the guys who put together this unbelievable program. God doesn't necessarily always work through saints. You know what I mean? I love the fact that he works through sinners. I wouldn't be here if he didn't. Anyway, the wonderful thing about these guys is they understood that you do not fight alcoholism with sobriety. You don't just stay sober. They tried that. All of them 1,000 times. It never worked. They got drunk again. Okay? You fight alcoholism with spirituality. That's what they discovered. And they discovered it in the Oxford group. Independently, Bill and Bob ended up in the Oxford group, just coincidentally. And what the Oxford group really was it was a first century Christian practitioners. They were basically kind of an evangelical offshoot of the Episcopal Church or something. And really what they were about was they were about doing more than going to church on Sunday. They thought that you really need to put a lot into this. There's a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of sin in the world. We need to be about the business of looking at how the first Christians acted, and we need to start doing that. And that's what this guy Frank Buchman and his Oxford group crew did. And every night they would meet, and they would witness, which is kind of like what we do at speaker meetings. And they would run around and try to help people, and they were constantly trying to improve their behavior through the practice of things like restitution, which is basically our 9th step, with sharing with other people about your defects. And that's basically what our 5th step was. A lot of prayer, a lot of meditation. Every single day they would do quiet time, which is like morning prayer and meditation. They would do evening review. That's what the Oxford groupers would do. They understood that without God they were nothing, and they would make demonstrations like we do a 3rd step prayer. They would make those same types of demonstrations about God. I'm not doing a real good job here. I really need your help. and whatever prayers kind of similar to that, basically inviting God in. And the framework of the 12 steps was really offered to a lot of alcoholics through the Oxford group. It's funny, Bill Wilson wasn't the only Oxford group member to write a book about alcoholism and recovery from it. He wasn't even the first one to write a book on that. There's a number of books that talk about this. For Sinners Only, The Big Bender, I Was a Pagan. These are all books that were written by Oxford group members before Bill Wilson penned the big book. So there was a lot of people getting sober in the Oxford group because of the fellowship, which would be meeting practically every day and having house meetings all weekend long. I mean, they fellowshipped like maniacs. We're doing a similar thing here this weekend. This is like an Oxford group house party, to be meeting together for a whole weekend. Well, that's what they used to do, and that's what Bill Wilson did when he was getting sober. They would also, go out and try to help other people. There was a number of things that they were doing. So Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob are involved with these people, but there's a difference in participation level. Dr. Bob continued to drink. He was going to the Oxford group for about 3 years or so and drinking. We've seen this happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. Somebody come into meetings and continuing to drink, but continuing to come back. Well, that's what Dr. Bob was doing. But what he was doing was he was coming late, he was leaving early, and he wasn't getting involved. He wasn't participating. Now, what Bill Wilson was doing was he was coming early, he was leaving late, he was bringing people, he was tracking people down to bring drunks in to help. He was witnessing, he was sharing, he was getting involved, and he stayed sober. So that's kind of a lesson that I think we can learn, ourselves from why was Bill successful and why was Dr. Bob not successful. It was participation. It wasn't one guy was smarter than the other or one guy knew more than the other. It was one guy did more work than the other, and that's the guy who ended up staying sober. Now, they recognized that the spiritual practices in the Oxford group were keeping them sober. There was some early strife with some of the Oxford group members, and it basically had to do with Bill. Bill was bringing drunks into the meeting. Now, picture a meeting maybe twice the size of this, and with Oxford group members, and these are church people. They weren't all the Oxford group people weren't alcoholic. They were a whole cross section. Frank Bookman would try to go after the richest and the most famous. That's what he would try to do. So there's some highfalutin, type people in these meetings. And Bill was dragging these drunks, out of the Bowery, off the bar stool. They'd be staggering in, they'd be causing trouble. They'd be hitting on the women or, pushing somebody aside and blithering into the microphone. There was all kinds of problems. So what happened was Bill was kind of asked, hey, can you take your parade and move it down the street? And that's kind of what happened in New York. The Akron group, Dr. Bob was doing this in Akron with the in the Oxford group, and he stuck it out with the Oxford group for a while longer. Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship was actually named after the book. What happened was Bill started to see these offshoots, these different groups starting, and there was some stuff that concerned him about some of these people. They were doing it their way. You know how we are as alcoholics. We're gonna do it our way, and some of the people that were doing things were really concerning him. So he knew he was going to have to write a book detailing out the process. What are we doing as alcoholics? What are we doing to be able to stay sober and to recover from this illness? And he started writing the big book. Now, after the big book was published, that's really when the name was changed of these groups to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I like to think that we always need to use the book Alcoholics Anonymous as our benchmark, as our touchstone. I really like history. I read history books like people read the newspaper. I just love history. My sister's a medieval historian, PhD, and it just kind of runs in the family to do this. And I love history. And I'll tell you a little bit about the mechanics of history. If you want to study a certain thing, whether it's Roman history, Christian history, whatever, what you want to do is you want to look at the culture. You want to look at what's going on in the culture. You want to get your hands on the earliest texts, the earliest unadulterated texts, to be able to do a real study of Alcoholics Anonymous and what's going on. And in many, many cases, in different religions and different spiritual traditions, what's happened is the later publications have watered down or changed the trajectory of that particular religion or that particular philosophical tradition. And I think that's happened in Alcoholics Anonymous a little bit. So I like to go back to the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and even the original manuscript of the big book, which is now published by AA, to see what's going on during that period of time. What was really happening? What was really important? And the book Alcoholics Anonymous makes it very, very clear what the problem is. The first number of chapters describe alcoholism. It's a comprehensive description of alcoholism. And then by the time you get to We Agnostics and how it works, it starts to shift to the solution to alcoholism. And again, when I think back about what was going on with these guys, I think Bill Wilson was 4 years sober or something, and he's writing this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of the other members, the majority of the other members, had less than a year, and they were helping him by giving him suggestions. I can't imagine. I don't even want to let somebody with 4 years unaccompanied in my house. Let alone like people with less than a year, writing, helping with our literature. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But the book, I'm lucky enough to be involved in at a very, very high level with addiction and alcoholism treatment, addictive illness treatment. I'm a board member of the NCADD. I'm a board member of C4 Recovery Solutions. I go to all the conferences and symposiums, and I know so many high level people who are in addiction treatment. And listen, it has been tried 1,000 times. People have tried to write books that would be more significant for the treatment and recovery process of addictive illness than the book Alcoholics Anonymous. But I need to tell you that nothing has even come close. A lot of very, very smart people have put out books. I think a book a month comes out by somebody who's going to improve on the AA stuff, and I'm telling you, it's never even come close. The book Alcoholics Anonymous is so significant, and what's in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, if it's followed, is sufficient. Of itself, it is sufficient. In other words, the program of recovery in the book is sufficient for the recovery from alcoholism. It may not be sufficient if there's other problems, if the people have other problems, but it's sufficient for recovery of alcoholism. I've seen it happen time and time again. Cunning, baffling, powerful. I work with a lot of alcoholics. I've had commitments in treatment facilities since 1991. I've been doing talks and lecturing and doing different things in treatment centers. I've sponsored hundreds of knuckleheads. The newcomers. Cunning and baffling and powerful. What's really, really unbelievably destructive with alcoholism is this. alcoholism invariably does not allow us the dignity of a self-appraisal, an accurate self-appraisal. Now, what I mean by that is we are always in more trouble than we think we are. We are. Listen, I remember I was sponsoring this one kid, and I mean, his life was on fire. I mean, there was still smoke from this guy. He burned his life down so much. He stunk like smoke. And, he had gotten DUIs and thrown out of college, and, his family hated him, and, I mean, I could go on and on and on. His life was burnt to a cinder. And he comes to me seemingly with a lot of willingness, right? And he's like, oh my God, my life, oh. And so basically I say to him, I go, okay, here, this is what alcoholism is. I do what it explains for us to do in the chapter Working with Others. I explain alcoholism. I help the guy identify with the characteristics of alcoholism. So, maybe he can say, yeah, that's me, I got that. And he's going, yeah, he's yeah. And I go, okay, listen, you're an alcoholic, and it's unbelievably rare it's like 1 in 1,000 that an alcoholic is going to be able to take care of their own problem on their own. We need outside help. That's what an alcoholic is. We need to find a power greater than ourselves. We need to start practicing spiritual principles, because if the power doesn't work in and through us, we will not stay sober. And you know what? It'll always get worse. It'll never get better. So as many things as you burnt down in your life, it's going to be worse next month unless you start to work a spiritual program. So what I want you to do is I want you to come over to my house on Tuesday night. We'll sit down with the big book. I will outline the program of action, and we will get started on it so that you can get in touch with a power greater than yourself that will solve your problems and enable you to be safe and protected from the first strength. So Tuesday night. And he goes, oh, wow, man, Tuesday? I would, but, I'm having my feet scraped on Tuesday. And, I do it after that, but, it's the summer, and the Dead tour is starting, and I always tour with the Dead. And I'm looking at this guy like, oh my God, he's going to die. And he doesn't even know it. I mean, listen, this is alcoholism. Alcoholism does not allow us an accurate self-appraisal. We don't get it. Everybody knows that we're drinking ourselves to death, and we don't get it. And that's one of the aspects of the illness. That's one of the symptoms of the illness, that inability to connect with how much trouble we're really in. So that is cunning, baffling, powerful. Oh my God. Another thing that happens is we outthink things. I remember when I was first exposed to the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Basically, I read them off the wall. Anybody read the steps off the wall? Let me just put it this way: you do the steps off the wall, you'll have an off-the-wall program, and that's what I had, because I looked at the steps, and they're on like window shades, like. Who came up with the window shade idea? Window shade, Doug. Where did that come from? Anyway, I'm reading the window shade, and I'm going, okay. And, I agree with that in theory, but I'm not going to do it because it doesn't really have anything to do with me. I don't see how any of that's going to help me. And that's what we do. We decide that we don't need to go make amends. We decide we don't need to do a fifth step. We decide we don't need to become disciplined with prayer and meditation. We decide we don't need to go out and work with others. That's part of the insanity of alcoholism. And I'll explain why. Let's say you come down with pancreatic cancer, and it's like stage 4 or something, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor goes, yeah, you're going to die. It's not going to be pretty. Sometime in the next 2 or 3 months. but doc, is there anything? Well, there's this clinical trial out in Akron, Ohio, and it's been showing some really good results. Really? Tell me about it. Well, they've got a 12-process procedure, and it seems like every single person that has gone through all 12 of those processes has recovered from pancreatic cancer. Every single person that's gone through. What would you not do to get into that clinical trial in Akron? You would sell your house, you'd sell your family, you'd quit your job. I'm going to Akron! And there would be a sense of urgency about getting to Akron and getting into that 12 procedure. But that's not what happens to us. What we say is like, wow, man, I would, but I'm touring with the dead. It's part of alcoholism, and it's one of the things that kills us. It kills us. We don't understand how much trouble we're in, and our sponsors are usually like, you what? You did what? You ever working with somebody and they come to you with a plan? They got a plan. I got a plan. You're like, please share the plan with me. I know it's going to be a beaut. And it's like, well, now that I'm not doing cocaine, I can sell it and make a lot of money. Oh, that's a beaut. That's a beaut. Thank you for sharing that with me. I think we're going to go another direction. I think we're going to find a different kind of gainful employment for you. So listen. There's so much insanity. If you're putting ethyl alcohol into your body at like a quart of time every single day, you really are going to be generating some serious insanity. And I'm telling you, one of the things it's very difficult sometimes working with these new guys. And I got to tell you, one of the mistakes I made back when was. I really thought I was to counsel them. I really thought that I was supposed to be like a drama coach. Like give me a call, when you shoot yourself in the foot, and I'll help you get through it. I mean, I had this misconception about how to work with other people. This is before I was exposed to the book Alcoholics Anonymous. There was like an oral tradition thing that was going on in New Jersey at that time. Like you got to give it away the way you got it, Well, what if you had a mutton head for a sponsor, with no experience with recovery, Are you going to continue that debacle, I mean, there was all this stuff that was going on, and I was doing that. I was the drama coach. I was the person that you called after you blew up your life. And I was the person who would take you to detox after you drank. And I was the person who would sit on the phone in midnight, while you're blithering all your crap, not willing to listen to one piece of advice, but you needed to talk. I need to talk. And I was the guy that was on the phone and, calling me at work with stuff. I mean, and I was doing this for a long, long time. Finally, I got exposed to some people who had some true experience with the recovery process in the Big Book. And, I don't sponsor like that anymore. I don't take them on to raise them up anymore. You know what I mean? That's not what these early members of Alcoholics Anonymous did. Doug is going to be doing a deal tomorrow, and he's going to be giving you a beautiful cross section of what the first AA members, especially the ones in Akron, did with their prospects and proteges, with the new people who would come in. They didn't take them on to raise them. They didn't say, give me a call, if you feel like drinking. What they did was they brought them in and they started taking them through the recovery process, which is basically what ended up becoming our 12 steps. And that became very, 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 very important to them. In some areas, I know that's changed. That's not the first priority. That's not there's not a sense of urgency anymore about taking somebody through the steps right away. there's the idea that there needs to be a stabilization period and a lot of other things. They did not believe that back in the day. You would still be vomiting, and they'd be on step 2 with you. And that's just what they did. Now maybe there's some wisdom in stretching things out a little bit. I'm not saying that there isn't, but what I was trying to do, the mistake I was trying to do as a sponsor in those early days, what my mistake really was believing that I could help someone manage an unmanageable life. I believed that I could help protect somebody against something that they were powerless over. Instead of understanding that my job is getting them, preparing them for a lifetime relationship with a power greater than themselves, which will solve all those problems, which will answer all the true questions, which will help the enabler to become happily and usefully whole. I love this sentence. It's in the 12 and 12. The 12 steps are a set of principles, spiritual in nature, if when practiced as a way of life, will expel the obsession to drink and enable the user to become happily and usefully whole. It's a beautiful explanation of our recovery process. If practiced as a way of life, the 12 steps, they'll enable you to be able to stay separated from alcohol and allow your life to become happy and useful, and you will feel whole. I believe the alcoholic at core, I said this earlier, suffers from a sense of separation. A separation from God, a separation from the fellow man, a separation from love and compassion, just a separation from the divine. And what recovery does is it puts us back in touch with that. It heals the separation. It enables us to become happy, useful, and whole. And I think that's incredibly important to understand. Alcoholism is cunning, baffling, and powerful. We can go down a lot of rabbit holes with it. We can start working on the wrong problem. There's a lot of wasted time working on the wrong problem. I'll give you a beautiful snapshot of my sponsor, Fish Food Phil, and how he understood what the real problem was. Okay? I came over to his house one time. I'm like, Phil, they tracked me down. They think I borrow this money. They're coming to break my legs. I've got my car's about to break down. I'm going to lose my job. My girlfriend broke up. Oh, Phil. And he goes, Chris, let me ask you a question. Yes, Phil. Do you pray? What? Do you pray? Should I start again slower? Did you hear me? They're going to come get me. What's praying got to do with it? And he would go, listen, I want you to do something. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. Every single morning, I want you to get down on your knees and I want you to ask God for the strength and direction to get through the day. And at night, I want you to thank Him for giving you the strength and direction to get through the day. And Chris, I know you. There are going to be days when you're going to forget to do that. I want you to pay attention to what happens on the days that you do it and pay attention to things that happen on the days that you don't. And I'm looking at him like he's insane. But the thing is he had like an uninterrupted series of being right. Like 12 times in a row, he was right about things. So I had to start believing it. So I go, all right, I'll do that. And he goes, and I want to see you at a meeting tonight. Now, what kind of an answer to the loan sharks are going to come kill me? My car doesn't run. I'm going to lose my job, and my girlfriend broke up with me. What? And you want me to pray? Are you completely out of your mind? I mean, this is what I'm thinking. I'm the kid that wants to go tour with the dad. But for one reason or another, I listened to him. Now, here's what Phil did. Phil understood the car breaking down was a symptom. Phil understood the loan sharks were a symptom. Phil understood that the girlfriend that left me was a symptom of my not being capable of being in a relationship. He understood all these things as symptoms of alcoholism, so he didn't want me to run down rabbit. He wasn't going to sit there and help me manage the loan shark. Help me manage, call the girlfriend up and get her over here. He wasn't about any of that business. He didn't want anything to do with that. He knew the real problem was alcoholism. And he knew the real answer was a connection to God and the people in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. He knew that was my answer, so that's what he was telling me to do. He didn't get involved in the periphery. He was very, very wise. And a lot of times, I need to remember that lesson because it's very, very easy for me to get caught up in the drama. A lot of the people you start to work with are still caught up in a lot of drama. And you'll want to go to traffic court with them, or you'll want to sit with their wife, to help counsel things out. You want to do all this kind of stuff. And I'm not even saying you shouldn't. But I truly believe that we need to keep our eye on the ball. What is the problem? That conscious separation from man, God, and the divine. What is the answer to that? Connection to God, man, and the divine. And we need to keep our eye on the ball. And the steps, the 12 steps, are truly spirituality for dummies. I mean, the idiot's guide to spirituality. That's really what they are. They are a very, very simple form of getting in touch with a power greater than yourself that will solve all your problems. And I cannot believe Bill and the first 100 got it so right in the book. I mean, the hand of God had to be on them. They were not smart enough to put the big book together. I truly think God just got tired of seeing us all die and cause trouble doing it, And so there was a divine inspiration to the writing of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe it. And I know that I would not have been able to continue to stay sober on a non-spiritual basis much longer. This was me at about 6 months sober before I went through the steps. I'm going to 14 meetings a week. I am absolutely desperate to stay separated from alcohol. I pulled a handgun on my family at Christmas. You know what I mean? I got to get sober. I don't want to kill my family. I like them. Sometimes, but I don't want to get in trouble, either, So I am desperate to stay sober. Desperate. I'm going to all these meetings. I hate them. I'm going to all these meetings. I'm telling you, I'm the secretary over here. I'm the coffee maker over there. I'm driving the boobies to the hatch. I'm doing whatever you ask me to do. I'm doing. But I would be sitting in a meeting, and this is what would happen. I'd be sitting there critical, I am the critic of this meeting, okay? I'm going to critique everybody. And, listen to this hypocrite. Oh yeah, you're so spiritual. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh no, he's raising his hand. Oh, I don't want to hear. Oh God, I don't. No, please don't call him. Please don't. Oh my God, they're calling on him. They called on him. Oh, now I'm going to have to hear about his family for like 5 minutes. Tell somebody who cares. Oh, now he's grateful. I'm going to slash all 4 of his tires in the parking lot and follow him outside so I can see gratitude in action. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, listen to this guy. Listen to him. Oh. Now, that's what's going on in my head. But I'm sitting here like this. And if you ask me at the meeting, how you doing, Chris? Great. Really good. Fine. Loving this AA. I mean, that's me on a non-spiritual basis. Okay, how long can you stay sober like that? Thank God I was exposed to the 12 steps. Thank God. Anyway, I love this area. I'm gonna sit down now. I hope I talked a little bit about Cunning, Baffling, and Powerful, and I'm looking forward to hearing my friend Doug. Thank you.
So I'm going to keep this mic up here. My name is Doug, and I am an alcoholic.
Oh, Doug.
Boy, it's great to be here. And once again, I want to thank everybody, and especially Jim over here, who You guys really showed us a wild Canadian time. So it took me, Jim, 3 hours to thaw out, and then I went under the blankets for another 2, and it kind of worked. So, but it was just, it was the most amazing God thing that I've experienced, and we're blessed to be here. Chris and I speak around the world together, and we've had a lot of fun doing this, bringing the original message of Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. As many of you all know, or maybe you don't, I'm a retired airline captain from one of the U.S. airlines. I'm not going to mention any names, obviously for stock option reasons, and I don't want the stocks to go down because then I lose my retirement. But I'm a checklist type of guy. You give me a checklist, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous here, you give me a checklist and I'm going to follow it. And I've been following this for 18 years. And I've watched it save countless lives. And so today I'm going to have the honor of introducing to you a method that Dr. Bob used when he was bringing people through the Big Book. Because if you read in the stories about Dr. Bob's nightmare, it states how, and I'm turning the pages right now. Oh, I guess I'm in the 4th edition. Wait a second. And so it states that, as I keep talking, trying to make this thing happen over here. And it's in Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And it's stated, here it is. It says, a co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, the birth of our society dates from the first day of permanent sobriety. Here we go again. Using the word permanent. Imagine that. Hi, my name's Doug. I'm an alcoholic and I'm permanently sober. I mean, the whole meeting would be about me, and I'll discuss that later. It says, 1950, the year of his death, he carried the AA message to more than 5,000 alcoholic men and women. So Dr. Bob also sponsored women. And what I'm here to do today is to show you his methodology. So 5,000 men and women he took through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he did that within his 10 years of sobriety. So do the math. He was really forcing these people through the book, right? And he was doing it within 4 to 5 hours. And so I'm going to show you on how he used to do it. And I challenge you to show that to others. And you will watch just lives change. And what we're going to do today is we're going to change lives. And we're doing it one alcoholic at a time. But in the checklist here, it says that Chris S. will speak first. And you all want to hear Chris S. So, my dear friend, Chris S.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to be back here. What a great town you have here. Thoroughly enjoyed myself last night. I always love listening to Doug. Who's got more energy than Doug? I mean, man, oh man. If you could bottle the energy of that guy, you'd knock crack off the market. You know what I mean? All right. Well, we are, like Doug said, we're here to share our experience, strength, and hope. We're here to share, especially our experience with the recovery part of the triangle. Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. I have an unbelievable amount of respect and gratitude toward AA and toward the people in AA, toward all the meetings, and especially toward the literature, because I would not be here. The last 5 years or so of my drinking were just as bleak and as decadent as you can imagine. I was just trying to survive the day until I could get a hold of some liquor. This is on work days. Until I could get a hold of some liquor and check out. I mean, the pain of being me was so great that I just wanted oblivion. Bill talks about it in his story. He talks about that need for oblivion. To end the personal suffering through just getting so inebriated that you just check out, mentally, physically, you just check out. And I was basically living to do that. I would get up in the morning, just as sick as you could be. I'd get through work. I'd go to the liquor store. I'd get drunk. I would start drinking at around 4:45 every day. By 6 o'clock, I would be just as drunk as you can be. By 8 o'clock, I would be in a blackout. A lot of times, I'd be phoning people. You know, any drunken dialers in here? Oh my God! You ever realize that you've done it in blackouts? You know, you see the phone numbers. I mean, that was me because I had such a sense of loneliness about my existence. I was so cut off from anything comforting, you know, and I was just drinking to just escape this stuff. And by probably 8:30, 9 o'clock, I would be passed out drunk, and I usually passed out sitting up. I would crash. You'd hear me hit the floor. You would think after years and years of doing that I would put carpeting in the room. Because I'd bruise myself up every day. But we're too busy to do things like get car insurance or I mean, I was too busy. I was about the business of just getting through work and just getting drunk. Now, this gets my attention in a number of ways and a number of different times. I was exposed to some outpatient treatment because of a DUI that I had. And I learned a little bit about the availability of treatment for addictive illness, and that there is a place called Alcoholics Anonymous that one might go and maybe achieve some support for achieving sobriety. And I learned a few of these things. And around 1989, I started reaching out for help because I was getting to the point where I knew I wasn't going to survive much longer. Not only was I drinking a lot, but I was involved in some psychotic things. I mean, you want to talk about a Jekyll and a Hyde? I'm a pretty decent guy, sober. But you put enough alcohol in me, and I'm answering my door with a handgun. I am perceiving that there are people who are trying to rip me off, and I am going to go kill them. And all this insanity that was going on in my mind. And I knew it was only a matter of time before I did something that would either get me killed, put me in prison, or I was going to die from alcohol detox. And so the survival mechanism within me that I believe is sometimes, for many of us, the grace of God, got me exposed to some treatment, and then got me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I talked a little bit last night about I had kind of misdirection as far as what was going on in my early days in AA. This is what I thought. I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was a giant pep rally. And what would happen is you would go in and you would be reconvinced to not drink. So you go in and you do your meeting and it's like, yay, we don't drink today, and at the end, you all form a big circle, almost like a football huddle, and you're like, okay, we're going to keep it simple, we're going to first things first, we're going to upside down think, okay, we'll meet back tomorrow at the Looney Nooney, okay, break, and I thought it was about, enthusing me to remain sober, like just reconvince Chris that it's a priority to stay sober and everything will be fine. Now, so I'm going to AA, I'm going to outpatient. I've told everybody that, I'm not drinking anymore. And on the way to an AA meeting one time, I had almost 90 days. On the way to and listen, in any meeting I was in, I guarantee to you, I was the person who wanted to stay separated from alcohol more than anybody else in that meeting. I know it. And on the way to an AA meeting one day, the thought came to my mind. Remember I was talking about the obsession of the mind last night? The thought crossed my mind that, you know what? You've been sober almost 3 months now. And, you don't even remember really. It's been so long, you don't even really remember what it's like to be drunk. I'll bet if you stopped at the liquor store and got a gallon of vodka and drank it, that it would remind you why you're doing all this AA stuff. So get this. I bought a gallon of vodka and I drank it to improve my sobriety. Listen, the obsession of the mind doesn't care how it gets alcohol back into your body. Alcoholism doesn't care how it tricks you into drinking it. If you don't have a spiritual protection from the first drink, something like that will happen to you. You know, I mean, it's a phenomenon. You know, it's not something that you can tie down to scientifically. It's just an obsession that comes into your mind, and that's what happened. I started drinking. Now picture this: I got a gallon of vodka, and I'm making a drink, and I'm sitting there. This is a good idea. You know, I heard somebody at the meeting say, if you can't remember your last drunk, you haven't had it. So I'll remember this one. You know, this will be my last. You know, this is work. This is good. And, you know, second one, I'll drink the second one. Everything's fine. This is great. This is a good idea. I drink it. All of a sudden, I start to get really drunk, and all of a sudden, I go, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've opened up the cage door to the beast, and the beast is going to move me around like a puppet, you know, for who knows how long. Oh my God, what have I done?" And I realized the enormity of my mistake. I have now put alcohol back in my body, and who knows where I'm going to end up. Now, think about this. Think about this. We talk about insanity in step 2. We talk about insanity in step 2. Was I insane when I was drinking and drunk, or was I insane before I was drinking and I was drunk? Listen, to be an alcoholic like me, to buy a gallon of vodka and start drinking it, for somebody like me, that alcohol was killing, and I put myself in a treatment center for 28 days and $13,000, and I'm going to outpatient treatment, paying $70 a night, 2 nights a week, and I'm going to AA meetings. I've told everybody I'm never drinking again, and here I am drinking. That's plain insanity that I did that. And being insane is basically all about not knowing the difference between good, right, and wrong. Not knowing the difference between good and bad. That's what insanity is. So I'm insane. And the alcohol actually restored me to sanity, because once I started feeling the effects of the alcohol, I realized the mistake I had made and how huge it was. It talks about in the big book here that Bill did this. And what happens is we sit there and we beat on the bar, asking ourselves, how could we have let this happen again? This is the tragedy of alcoholism. We do not have a mental defense against the first drink. You know, listen, I'm in AA. I'm in outpatient treatment. I've made a commitment. I want to be sober more than anybody else in any of the AA meetings I'm in, and I'm drinking a gallon of vodka. What is that? You know, what is that? Well, you know, I'm a dead man. You know, I can't even not drink. And so that really got my attention, because it took about 5 months or 7 months to get sober after that again. Because, you know, once I'm drinking, I'm in it. And I have to be separated, and there's different things that can separate us, but I have to be separated. And what basically happened is Christmas of 1989. I'm at my mother's house. My brother and sister are home for Christmas. There's nieces and nephews and cats, and it's like this festive mood, and you know there's Christmas carols on the stereo, and you can smell Christmas cookies, and there's presents under the tree that's decorated. The stockings are hung by the chimney with care, and I start drinking Johnny Walker Black, because that's my Christmas drink. Anybody else have like a Christmas drink that you get just at Christmas? You know? And I start drinking Johnny Walker Black, and I go into a blackout, and I get a resentment. Anybody understand those drunken resentments? Like, what did you say to me? You know, it was like, I know what you mean by that. You know, and I go into an absolute rage where I threaten everybody's life. You know, and they bail. They take their Christmas elsewhere. You know. And I come too, you know, wondering where the presents went, and I'm like shattered. I'd been in a blackout for about 4 or 5 days, and it was just brutal. And you know, I remember staggering into the kitchen. You know how you had to put the spigot under your, drink because you're dehydrated, your brain is about to dry out, and so you drink water out of the spigot. And I'm doing that, and I'm looking, and there's piles of vodka bottles. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't remember buying any of them. I must have staggered up to the liquor store, about 30 times. And then I start going into the DTs. Anybody in here ever experienced full-blown, ugly terror DTs? I mean, it's just an awful, awful experience. I start to just freak out. I mean, the DTs are bad. I started to hallucinate, and there are animals running around like, whoa, what was that? And there's things scratching on the house. I later found out it was the wind, moving some branches against the house. But there are big animals scratching on the house, trying to get in. And there's maggots on the slipcovers of the couch. I'm like, oh. And I mean, just freaking out. And I remember laying back on the couch, like just trying to get comfortable, trying to get a little bit of sleep because, for 3 days I couldn't sleep in these DTs. And I'm looking up at the ceiling, and all of a sudden, out of the ceiling came this demon. It was like Satan himself comes out of the ceiling. It's like a big bullhead, like one of those old monitor heads, and the snot is coming out, and it's coming down to eat my face. And I'm like, no! I freak out. I go, God, help me! And it disappeared. And, it was that crying out to God from that kind of, defeat. I mean, I really thought that I was going to die. And I cried out for help. Now, many of us have these types of prayers in our life during our separation events. We all have separation experiences from alcohol. Well, this was mine, because after crying out to God like that, I have not had a drink since that day. And I believe God heard that prayer. And certain circumstances and situations started to fall into place in my life. I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous as soon as I could. I got to tell you, I was shattered, and I was not right. But the minute I could get out to my car and go to an AA meeting, I went. And I'll tell you that story. I had the most beat up piece of crap car that you could have. It was amazing. It was even still running. It was a 1976 Ford Granada with white walls, with no muffler, no clutch, no emergency brake, no heater, and it's the middle of the winter. So if you made the mistake of turning on the heater, antifreeze would spray on the inside of the windows. And it had all the quarter panels were gone, and inexplicably it had orange paint. It was like somebody took a gallon of orange paint and just threw it around the interior. This thing was a piece of crap, and because it didn't have a clutch, it could only be driven on flat areas. So literally, I had a meeting book, and I had to find a flat meeting. So I'm looking through the meeting book, and I go, okay, well, there's one in Morristown, that's kind of highway, that's flat. So I drove to the nearest flat meeting, and I remember, as you pull into the church parking lot, there was just a little tiny hill that you had to go up to get into the parking lot. It was like a foot or two high. And there was the porch, right, where all the alcoholics are at. 400 alcoholics are out having cigarettes out on this porch. And I've got to drive up this little hill past them to get into the... Now, I got no clutch and no muffler, so I have to do this. I have to, drive by them, going a mile and a half an hour. And I could still see them all looking at me like, must be a new guy, And then because the parking lot's not level, I had to park my car against a tree because no emergency brake, no clutch. There was no way of stopping it unless it was flat. So I did that, and it was nobody parked next to me, I'll tell you either. But and then I went into this meeting, and I'm just shattered. We have sometimes it's hard to remember how tough it is to walk into your first meeting. This is my first meeting back after like 7 months, and I was dying, and I had self-centered fear on me so thick you've got no idea. I walk into the meeting and I sit toward the back, and I sit down, and I thought that this was a beginner's meeting. It turned out that it was a step meeting, and they were on step 12, and they were going up and down the rows reading a paragraph. So I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm here, oh God, oh. And somebody goes, here, and hands me a step book and goes, we're reading from step 12. And I look, and they're coming down the row at me. I'm going to have to read. So I panic. I go, oh my God. And I get up and I leave. No way am I going to be able to read a paragraph. I mean, that's how shattered I was. So I go outside, and I'm standing outside, and I'm standing on the stoop, and I'm having a cigarette, and I'm thinking, we're here by seconds and inches sometimes, folks. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is too much. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. If I don't do this AA, I'm going to die. But I can't do this too much, and asking me to read. And so this guy comes out. I guess he saw me leave. I'll never forget. His name was Jorge, and he comes out and he starts talking to me. He goes, "Hey, I saw you leave. How you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, really bad. Come back. Relapse, the demons, the maggots, the slip. Oh God, it's really bad." And he goes, well, why don't you come on back into the meeting with me? And I'm like, oh, I don't like it. Tomorrow, there's this meeting tomorrow in my town. I think I'm going to go back tomorrow. And he's like, no, come on in. He's like yanking me. So, I'm like, oh, all right. And he drags me back in, and the only seats left now are in like the second row. So, he brings me in there and he sits me down. And, I'm sitting there and I'm listening to somebody share, and I can't hear a word they're saying. My head is just, all consuming insanity, And all of a sudden he leans over and he goes, raise your hand and tell everybody you're coming back. And I look and I go, what? He goes, raise your hand and tell everybody you're coming back. I'm like, well, there's this meeting tomorrow. Everybody raises their hand and everybody says they're coming back. There's a meeting tomorrow. I think we're going to do it tomorrow. And he keeps going. He's like, no, raise your hand, tell them. And he's starting to get loud now. People are starting to look at us, because he's talking about, now people are looking at us, I know they're going to be thinking at me next, this is too much. So I got to shut this guy up. So I've never seen this happen before. I've never seen it happen after. Right in the middle of somebody sharing, I go, like this. And the person chairing the meeting is like, what? And I'm like, and so the person chairing the meeting shuts the person up who's talking and calls on me. And I say something really profound, like, Chris is going to go like the demons, like boxes, you guys, the baggage, the terrorists, horrible. Oh, thank you. And the room is quiet. You can hear a pin drop. Everybody's like, and then all of a sudden, the whole place goes, yeah, like this, and they start cheering. And I'm like, oh, And listen, I took it as acceptance at the time. You know what I mean? I now know people like, oh my God, thank you for sharing. I thought I had trouble. Oh my God, do I not want to be you? Oh, I am so glad I came here. And I know that that's what it is now, but back then I took it as acceptance, and it was a powerful experience for me. It was a powerful experience because I thought if I had the courage to be able to raise my hand and tell everybody I'm coming back, I might make it. I might be able to stay in this Alcoholics Anonymous thing. There was a wall of self-centered fear. And, that's what we die from, folks. We die from this unnatural sense of self. All spiritual, really spiritual people, spiritual masters, they all understand that we are one. That we are one. The alcoholic is on the other extreme of that compass. We think that we're all us, and everything's coming at us. Albert Einstein once said the grand delusion of mankind is they believe there's more than one of them here. Think about that. Think about that. So I was so isolated and I was so filled with self-centered fear that I couldn't even raise my hand and tell people, hey, I'm coming back. But this guy helped me do it. This guy, Jorge. If it wasn't for him, you'd have a different speaker here tonight. He pushed me into doing something that gave me just enough power to come back the next day, and keep this mechanism, this spiritual mechanics of Alcoholics Anonymous working for me, So and I found out later, how much time Jorge had? 2 weeks. He was 2 weeks sober. So if you think you're too new to help people, if you've just started coming around, let me tell you, somebody with 2 weeks saved my life. So anyway, here I am. I'm going to AA meetings. I talked about this a little last night. I'm going to AA meetings like a wild man. I am fellowshipping. You know what I mean? I'm here. I'm there. And listen, people are patting me on the head. They're saying, "Chris, you're doing great." Pat, pat, pat. Good to see you. Every meeting I go to, you're there. Pat, pat, pat. I really was willing. I was very, very willing. I used up a lot of energy. There's a chapter in our book called Into Action. What I was doing at that time was I was into activity. I was showing up. I was showing up, and I was reaching out my hand to whatever extent I could. I was reaching out my hand. But I am what the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous describes as a real alcoholic. And I don't mean, I don't want to sound exclusive or demeaning to the real alcoholic. All the real alcoholic is it's an individual who's gone down the scale far enough that their power, choice, and control can be non-existent at certain times. That's all a real alcoholic is. So often people come up to me afterward and talk to me about using real alcohol. Well, you think the rest of us aren't? I'm not trying to be divisive. These are the terminologies that it uses in the book, and it's only about power, choice, and control. It's not about the outside stuff. Alcoholism manifests in unmanageability in the exterior world with all the trouble that we get into and the problems that we have with people and the law and all that. But the real tragic part of alcoholism is the internal stuff that goes on, the stuff that goes on within us. Yeah, we suffer a lot of consequences, but the real pain is inside of us. And I've got to tell you that what I was doing, which was going to a lot of meetings, and I was even trying to be of service by, volunteering for certain group functions and trying to help people, who had maybe less money than me. I'd buy them dinner. I would do all kinds of things like that. I was very generous. But what I was doing was really working only one part of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was the unity part. What happened to me basically was somewhere around 9 months sober, a buddy of mine, Radio Shack Mike. I had my sponsor, Fish Food Phil, and my buddy, Radio Shack Mike. And what Radio Shack Mike did was he gave me a series of tapes. He was the kind of guy who would go to the New Age bookstore and he'd, buy, he was very pious. He would buy whatever he would buy. Chris, man, you need pyramids over your bed. You got to have pyramids. And the next week it would be affirmations. You got to tell affirmations, And this one time I did. I started to do affirmations because he gave me a book on it. I remember standing in front of the mirror and 100 times I need to say, Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, you're a wonderful guy. Chris, you're I am not a scumbag. Listen, Radio Shack Mike wasn't trying to hurt me. He just didn't even come close to understanding the level of alcoholism I had. He got arrested for cocaine possession and came to AA like this. ready to go. I mean, I was just destroyed by alcohol. So these were two. So he's handing me affirmations to, trying to treat alcoholism with affirmations is like trying to stop a semi with a cobweb. You know what I mean? That you need a whole lot more ammunition in the gun than that. But this one day he handed me a set of tapes, and these were tapes by the late great Joe and Charlie from Arkansas. And he hands these to me, and it's like 8 90-minute tapes. I go, are you kidding me? He goes, no, listen, I didn't really enjoy these, but you're hardcore. You'll probably like these guys. Yeah. And I started listening to them, and oh my God, they pissed me off. Oh, listen, as an alcoholic, there's a great section in the book Alcoholics Anonymous where it says, if you have disturbed your prospect about their alcoholism, this is all to the good. And I understand what Bill Wilson is saying now, because in my days of early sobriety, my early years of bitter struggle in Alcoholics Anonymous, there would be people who would really piss me off. I mean, really upset me because they would be calling attention to something that I was doing wrong, or they would be correcting me about a misconception that I have or something, and I would be like, rah! But what would happen is I would have to deal with that. I would have to think about it. I'd have to come to terms with that information, and and move on, because it would just be it would burn inside me. So after I heard the message of Joe and Charlie, and this is basically what the message was that I heard. Chris, you're going to the fellowship. You're the pope of the fellowship. You are the king of all the meetings in the area. You're doing a great job with that. But if you're not working a program, the 12 steps out of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, you do not have an AA program. And if you don't have an AA program and you're an alcoholic, your chances are way more than average that you're going to drink. So when you drink, please don't go out and tell everybody that AA doesn't work, because you never engaged in the program of recovery. Think about it like this. Let's say you had a type of cancer, okay, foot cancer, all right, and you go to the hospital and you go in the waiting room, and there's a whole bunch of other people with foot cancer in the waiting room, and you sit in the waiting room and you talk about foot cancer, and you form a little club and you pay some dues, and you put a little foot cancer literature together, and you share about foot cancer, and I'm grateful I've got foot cancer, and then you go home and you never leave the waiting room, you never go in for the operation, you're part of the waiting room crew. I mean, wouldn't that be insane? Yet that's exactly what I was doing in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was going into the meetings and I was sharing about my alcoholism, and I learned very, very early how to give good share. How to be like a little bit self-deprecating and tell funny stories about how stupid I was that day, so everybody likes me and laughs. I learned how to give share like that, and so I'm sharing, and I'm even sometimes saying I'm grateful. But I'm not getting out of the waiting room, which is the meetings. I'm not going in for the treatment for alcoholism, and this is basically what the Joe and Charlie tapes are telling me. I've not engaged in a recovery process. Now, I get pissed off. I get through all the tapes so I can say that I did. I put them on the shelf, and I'm like those guys from Arkansas. That's not how we do it. In New Jersey, we treat our alcoholism by going to a discussion meeting and sharing. So we share. I don't know how they do it in Arkansas. They do all this work in Arkansas. We share. And what happened was, all of us get challenged. All of us get challenged, and all of us go through, basically like an emotional bottom. A lot of us experience this in AA. And what it can basically be is a lot of life challenges hitting you at once that you have no spiritual fortitude to be able to get through. And that's basically what happened to me. A whole bunch of different things happened. And, I remember going over to my sponsor's house and talking to him about it. And I did talk to him about it. And after that, I went back home and I pulled these tapes down off the shelf. I just knew somehow, some way, that there was some truth in what Joe and Charlie were talking about. Listen, if you're an alcoholic and something disturbs you about your alcoholism, and it's truthful, it's something that's truthful, that truth will haunt you. You will need to deal with that some way, somehow, as you move through your life. And I had to deal with my alcoholism. And it got so bad, and listen, I didn't do this out of any sense of virtue, to be a better AA. I did it solely to stop feeling the pain of the bondage of self that Chris was experiencing. I didn't want to feel bad anymore. So I took these tapes down, I got my big book out, and I blew the dust off of the thing, and I had one of these big books that I got from treatment. Anybody have big books from treatment? And I opened it up, and I started the tape, and I got a notebook and a pen, and I sat there. And when Joe and Charlie went over an instruction, I would listen to the instruction. I'd stop the tape, and I would do the instruction before I moved on. I operated from that moment forward as if the big book was a textbook, and I needed to go through it and solve the problems and learn the material and then move on. And the reason I did this is there was nobody that was doing this in my area at the time. If you raised your hand and said, I really need to go through the steps in the meeting that I was in, you would basically be told, go to step meetings. Get the 12 and 12 and go to step meetings. And I remember one time, asking in a four-step meeting, just, because I went to step meetings galore, and I raised my hand one time, and I said, I'm thinking of doing a four-step, and I was just wondering if anybody had any advice on that, if they've done it before, and, they can point me to where I need to go. And this crusty old-timer raises his hand, and he goes, kid, you do a four-step with a pencil. And that was his advice. That's what he gave me. I'm like, thanks a lot, Clem. That's really helpful. Thank you very much for that wonderful sage advice. I do a four-step with a pencil. This is the last time I ask a question in this meeting. So anyway, I discovered these Joe and Charlie things, and I go through the steps, and what basically happened was these steps are designed to bring about a complete shift in consciousness. A spiritual awakening, I believe, a spiritual awakening is a miraculous shift in perception. We're no longer going to be viewing the world the way we view it. We're no longer going to be interacting with the world the way that we interacted. Our behavior and our perceptions and thinking are going to change. And this is the power of the 12 steps. Alcoholics Anonymous, folks, is two things. It is freedom and it is power. We get both of those things when we experience the recovery process. We're free to do anything that we want to do as long as our motives are good. And we have the power the power is working in and through us, to enable us to become happily and usefully whole, to recreate our lives, to solve our problems, and to really be, expressions of what we can be. We get to unlock all the chains that we've put around our life, and now we're free, and we have this spiritual power that enables us to live life, the way we need to live it, and be the way we need to be. So it's just amazing. So this is happening to me. Now sometimes I want to finish this talk by reading a little bit of the spiritual experience in here. This is page 183 in this little big book. I'm not sure. It's the Spiritual Experience Appendix. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, Transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James called the educational variety because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends in the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reactions to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped in an unsuspecting inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. So they're talking a little bit about what is a spiritual experience, what is a spiritual awakening. What is the treatment for alcoholism? I believe the treatment for alcoholism is this spiritual awakening. And it happened to me through the educational variety and slowly over the course of time. And there's a reason for that. And that's because I didn't engage in the recovery process in Alcoholics Anonymous right away. I had a period of flying blind where all I was doing was not drinking, going to meetings, and trying to be of service a little bit. And although that offered me the opportunity for a very tentative sobriety, it didn't really help me with my recovery. Now I'm going through the steps with the Joe and Charlie tapes. I'm now a tape guy because the more charge I'm getting off of doing these spiritual exercises, the steps, the better I'm feeling, and the more interested I am in this way of life. So I started to look for other Big Book Workshop tapes, and the next person that I was exposed to was a man named Joe Hawk. Joe Hawk became a very, very dear friend of mine. I'm grateful to be able to say that. I actually was able to do some personal work with Joe before he died. But he was a genius at putting into language the spiritual mechanics of the recovery process, to try to explain what you needed to do and what would happen to you if you did it. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That's a great line in this book. But it took somebody very, very experienced to be able to put into language this process of recovery. And I got very, very involved in the stuff that Joe was doing, and I started to do some work with him. Now, basically, kind of what happened, through all this was that I started to sound better at meetings where I was going to. People saw a very, very swift, positive change happening in me because I had gone through the steps. And a lot of guys were coming up to me and asking me if I would sponsor them. And it was almost like every lunatic in the rooms was like attracted to me at one point in time. And I was saying yes to everybody. And at this point in time, yes, I had a personal experience with the steps, but I still didn't know how to use them as a tool to sponsor. In our literature, it basically says a sponsor's main responsibility is an adequate presentation of the 12 steps. That's what our responsibility is as a sponsor. Bill said that himself. But what I was doing was I was doing it like it had been done for me. Here's my phone number. Give me a call. I'm willing to listen. Whatever you need. And I got involved in that type of sponsoring. And a lot of these guys were drinking on me. A lot of these guys were not staying sober. So what I decided to do one time is I said, you know what, I had a great experience with the Joe and Charlie tapes. I had a great experience going through the Big Book. It made a lot of sense. It changed me in a pretty profound way. I think I'm going to start bringing these guys over to my house and doing this. And I started bringing people over to my house and starting on the title page and going through this book, and where there was an instruction, we would stop and we would both do that instruction. I really thought at that time that if I was going to be taking somebody through the steps, I needed to be doing them myself. And so for a period of 2 or 3 years, I was taking a number of people through this book at my house, two nights a week. Come on over for 3 or 4 hours. We would be studying this, and we would be doing the homework. And the next week, you were coming with your 4-step or whatever. And I learned a great deal from this experience. I was helped incredibly, but so were some of these other guys. And the truth of this experience was this: that the people who came over to my house and went through the book with me and did the 4th and 5th step, did the prayers, put together their 8-step list, actually went out and made amends. One thing I always like to say is they should put actually in front of every single one of those steps. Because so often we think all we really need to do is share about them and read them and agree with them in theory. They're spiritual exercises that need to be taken. So the guys that came over to my house who bought in at that level, who actually did this and actually put together a prayer and meditation discipline and actually went out and worked with other people, every single one of those guys is still sober. I'm talking about from the early 90s. They're all still card-carrying AA members in good standing, still working with other people. Every single one of them. And the people who would recognize the 4th step as quite possibly an overreaction to a problem that they really have under control, or I can't go back to Mrs. McGillicuddy and say I'm sorry. The people who refuse to consider all of the steps, and what would happen in those cases was these people would just stop coming over to my house, and they'd get another sponsor. They'd get a sponsor who, an easier, softer way sponsor who just wanted them to be the cookie boy. I'm not going over to Chris's house anymore. He wants me to make amends. I got this new sponsor. He wants me to be the cookie boy. And they would do that. But the people who hung in there with me, every one of them is still around. The people who didn't, every one of them is gone. Every one of them is gone. I'm not saying they're drinking. I don't know what they're doing. Because when you leave AA, we're not about the business of keeping track of you. We're not going to chase you, and we're not going to keep track of you. You know where to find us if you need us. You know what I mean? And so I don't know where these people are. Probably a percentage of them weren't what we would call real alcoholics. Maybe they weren't. Who knows? But a number of them got drunk, and a number of them died. One of my early sponsees, I just heard this week. He was living out in Seattle. He was a guy that I sponsored for about a year, and was non-compliant. In other words, when I said, this is what you need to do, this is what I've done, this is what you need to do, he became non-compliant. When you become non-compliant, I don't need to fire you, you go away. That's just what happens. I no longer have anything for you, so you move on. And this individual moved on, and he was a brilliant trial attorney, this guy. Oh, man, he was one of the smartest people I have ever been in the presence of. But he wasn't smart enough to outwit alcoholism because he thought he could do it using his mental acuity. And you can't outthink alcoholism. You have to outact alcoholism. And he wasn't willing to do that, and he died in Seattle this last week. And, it's a shame. I've lost a lot of people in this last year. One of the things that's happening to a lot of the old-timers is pain medication. There is some serious pain medication out there today, and you can get it pretty quickly from practically any doctor. And what's happening to a lot of us, because a lot of us are showing up in treatment centers after 20, 30 years of sobriety, in AA, they're ending up in treatment centers because these pain medications are so powerful. They'll take you back to a consciousness of powerlessness. They will remove your defenses against the next drink, and you will experience the acute aspects of powerlessness at that point in time, and you'll either get way out of control with the drugs or the drugs and alcohol, and that happens to a lot of us these days. We must remain ever vigilant. But anyway, when we're talking about the spiritual awakening, Doug is going to take us through a process that the earlier AA members would do with people. They would give you the spiritual triage to start exposing you to the actual power of God. That's what this was about. Is that amazing or what? There are things that we have, there are barriers that we have erected out of a sense of self that we've placed in our lives that block the sunlight of the Spirit. It blocks the ability for God to come in and work in and through us because we've put up a barrier. I believe in the covenant that God gave us, basically in the Garden of Eden, and I want to talk about that just for a minute, using a little biblical vision and analogy. Okay, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. It's gorgeous. I mean, there's fruit on all the trees, perfect weather. They're running around naked, just having a great time. Oh, this is wonderful, this is wonderful. And God would show up every once in a while and say, bless you, my children, I want you to enjoy yourself. And God came down this one time and he said, look, I just have one rule. Please enjoy paradise. Please run around naked and have a good time. You know what I mean? But there's one thing that I need to ask you not to do. See that tree over there? That's the tree with the fruit of self-obsession. That's the tree with the fruit of self-centeredness. And I really recommend that you not eat of that. If you want to really enjoy paradise, don't go near that tree. And God goes and does what God does. And Adam and Eve are sitting around there. So they start talking. Like, why do you think God doesn't want us to eat of that tree? You know what? I'll bet you, we should probably go eat of that tree. So they do. And they both eat of the tree of self-centeredness, of self-obsession. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden they have this self-centeredness. They feel shy because they're naked, so they cover themselves up, and all of a sudden they're all like about self now. And God shows up, and just with one look, God can tell that they've eaten that fruit. And He goes, okay, listen, guys, I love you. You're my children. Obviously, you want to be involved with self. Obviously, you want to have self-determination. So I will grant you this self-determination that you want so badly. But you got to leave paradise. You got to leave Eden and you got to go over here east of Eden to the land of Nod. Anybody in here been to the land of Nod? I'll tell you, I have. Nod and out. I've been to the land of Nod now. So here, as humankind moves over to the land of Nod because of this sense of self that isolates us from paradise, what happens is, as alcoholics, we are living in the land of Nod, and we need to get back to the garden. And the 12 steps offer us a way back. We become willing. We ask God to please remove the defects of character. We make a decision in the third step to put ourselves back into God's care. God, please relieve me of this obsession of always, knowing everything. And please, I need to get back to the garden. And I'm turning my self-centeredness in at the door. And we get an opportunity to go back to paradise in Alcoholics Anonymous. We do. You have this spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps. You can go back to paradise. Remember, this is about power and it's about freedom. Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's about leaving behind the bondage of self and rejoining the universe again. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for this process and for what's going on in my life. I never knew it could be this good. I thought, okay, I'm going to AA so that I can stay separated from alcohol. I had no idea what was available in here. If you're new or if you're just coming back, there are two things that are true about you, and you're not going to think they are. One of them is you're in way more trouble than you think you are. You are. Alcoholism is an illness of minimization. However bad you think it is, put a couple of zeros in front of that and you're getting close. Okay, but the other thing that's true is there's a more significant answer to be had in the practice of the Alcoholics Anonymous principles than you are giving it credit for right now. There are more positive, significant changes available to you for engaging in this Alcoholics Anonymous thing than you can possibly imagine. And that's some really good news, folks. All right. I'm looking forward to hearing Doug. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, that was a great trip yesterday. We went out and grabbed a whole bunch of crabs and steamed them up. It was wonderful. Probably the best crabs I've ever had. A number of things happened this weekend. A number of things happened this weekend. Best clam chowder I think I've ever had in my life. Best salmon I've ever had. This place is great. Doug and I have both had a fantastic time, and I think this is the first time in my life I've been called a dignitary. Let me tell you, that's not what they were calling me in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? They weren't calling me for anything. They were telling me, "Would you just shut up? You over there, would you just shut up? Would you go somewhere else?" I mean, that's basically what was happening to me in the 80s. I was persona non grata practically everywhere I went. I was a blackout drinker. Any blackout drinkers in here tonight? Boy, isn't that fun? Isn't that disconcerting? Coming to in some town that you don't even know why you're there. I had a bunch of problems in blackouts. A lot of things would happen to me. I remember this one time. Well, I don't remember this one time where I called up my boss. I had a resentment. I called him up and I threatened his life. I'm going to kill you. And because it was a blackout, I forgot, and I went in the next day, walking in. He's like, "What are you doing here? You told me you were going to kill me." I'm like, "Well, what'd you do?" The alcoholic can never take responsibility for anything. It's always got to be somebody else's fault. I had a lot. It's the crazy thing about alcoholism is we don't do really well with alcohol a lot of times. I mean, crazy things happen to us. I want to tell you about the very first time I ever drank. I was about 12 or 13 years old, and me and a couple of my buddies cut school. We decided we're going to cut school and go back to my house. My mother was working, and get drunk. We had talked about this. We thought it would be really cool to do, to go drink some booze. So I went, and we did. We cut school. We went back over to my mother's house, and I brought down a bottle of Four Roses whiskey, Canadian whiskey, folks. Pulled it down out of the cabinet, blew the dust off of it, and I didn't know anything about drinking. All I knew was the old John Wayne movies. Remember those movies? Where John Wayne would walk into the bar, he'd walk in, he'd go, "Bartender, whiskey." And the bartender would pour a big glass of whiskey, and John would grab it and drink it down, grab the bottle, and go back to the table and sit there and drink until he had to shoot somebody. And that's all I knew about drinking. So that's what I did. I poured 3 big warm water glasses of Four Roses whiskey. I mean, if I smelled it today, I would get that because I got so sick on it. But here's what happened. Now, I want to tell you what happened to the 2 guys that I was drinking with. These guys were not alcoholic. They never became alcoholic. They never became problem drinkers. They were normal people, normal kids, just experimenting a little bit. And what they did was they drank about 2/3 of their glass, and that was it. They were done. Okay, they knew that to drink any more would probably not be a good idea. So they just sat back and they watched the show. Because what I did was I finished mine off, I finished theirs off. And I finished as much of that bottle as I could drink as a little 12-year-old. And I went into a blackout, and I don't remember much, but they told me some of the stuff that happened. I tried to trash the house. They split. I ended up coming to out in the field near my house. I came to out in the field. Like, what the hell am I doing in the field? And then I go into the house and I start to get sick. Now, remember your first drunk, like really bad drunk, how sick you got? I mean, you're sick for a couple of days. I was vomiting and I couldn't get off of a horizontal plane and for 2 days. And I mean, really, really sick. Now, here's the thing. A normal person, if they ever drank a food or a beverage and got that sick, they would never do it again. I mean, it would just, if you were like allergic to rutabagas or something, and you ate one and you got sick for 2 days, I mean, you'd have a sufficient defense against putting a rutabaga back in your body. You'd know. You'd always remember that, no thanks, none for me. I get sick on those things. And you would remember. But there was something that alcohol did something to me, but it also did something for me. And what it did was, I was always this kid who just didn't feel right about myself. I was always worried about what you were thinking about me. I was so attached to my perceived image of what you would think. I had to always be cool. I couldn't ever imagine, people thinking I was lame. So, I mean, I had this crazy impression. It's that self-centered stuff that the alcoholics have. I was always worried about something, I guess it was being shy. I really think it was probably more self-centered fear. But like if there was an oral report in school, I would cut because I couldn't go up in front of the class and talk about Columbus or something. I'm not going to do that. That's lame, So I would cut school for 3 or 4 days until they forgot about the oral report I would have to do. I mean, I would do all this stuff. So I was this kid that just didn't feel right. I didn't feel right. I hated school and nothing felt good, and I was always pretending everything was right. And when I took that glass of Four Roses whiskey and I put it down, by the second glass, that self-centered fear just left me. It just fell off of me. And I started to feel larger than life. I started to feel okay about everything. You know what I mean? Okay about everything. This alcohol did so much for me. One of the things that I remember back in school, I think I was maybe 8 or 9. Did you all have square dancing up here when you were kids in school? Do you even know what that is? I mean, what a horrible thing to do to pre-alcoholic kids, to make them do this. And I remember, there was a gymnasium bigger than this, and they would line up the girls on one side and the guys on the other, and they'd blow the whistle. And you as a guy would have to run across the gymnasium and ask a girl to dance, and they'd be your do-si-do partner or whatever. You know what I mean? That just freaked me out to have to do that. I'm like, oh my God, And every once in a while when I tell this story, a woman will come up to me and go, how do you think we felt? This whole herd of you guys running toward us. You know what I mean? Okay, I can imagine. But I was always terrified. What if she says no? And I find out later they were told, you better say yes. There might be alcoholics out there, who would kill themselves if you said no. And so but I was just terrified. This freaked me out. Now listen, that Four Roses whiskey. In that bottle, there was a lot of things. There were dancing lessons in that bottle. You give me enough whiskey, and I'll tell you what, I'll run across that gymnasium, and you know what? If she says no, she doesn't want to dance me, I'll say, well, don't come begging me later. You know? I mean, it just did so much for me. It just changed the whole way, you know, that I saw the world. And I wasn't worried about what you thought. You were lucky to be with me, you know? I mean, it was just a complete change from this, like shattered, you know, self-conscious person to just like some larger-than-life dude that's just running around not caring. And the fear left me. That fear left me. So I chased that feeling that I got, you know, forever. For 20 years, I chased that feeling of freedom, of self-freedom that alcohol offered me. Now, the two guys that were drinking with me, that's not what happened to them. You know, they got a little bit dizzy, a little bit lightheaded, you know, maybe felt a little nauseous, and they'd had enough, you know, and whenever I would drink with people like that, and you know, moving forward in my life, I would say, "Oh, you feel a little dizzy, a little lightheaded, a little nauseous? Well, chug 2 more of those and go right past all that to fun." You know, I mean, let's have some fun here. And I just had a complete different relationship to alcohol. Now, if you drink as much alcohol as I drank, you're going to get in trouble. There's going to be problems. You know, you make mistakes, and there are people who are going to hold you accountable to these mistakes. And some of them wear uniforms. And what I started to do very, very early on was I started to wreck cars. You know, is there any drunken drivers in here? You know. It's very, very serious these days, but I come from a period of time where drunks friends let friends drive drunk. I mean, that's just the way it was back in the day. We always had a road pint, you know, with us, and we really felt very strongly about hitting the road with confidence. You know what I mean? Like, you know, put a little ballast down, and I ended up starting to crash some cars, and The first one I crashed was when I was 17 years old. And what happened was I drove through a telephone pole. And it was not good because when the cops got there, I had no pulse and I wasn't breathing. It was a really, really bad accident. I went flatline in the ambulance on the way to the hospital after that. And, you know, I don't remember much from the hospital. I remember that the doctor couldn't give me anesthesia because I was drunk. So he had to sew my head shut with me drunk out of my mind, vomiting, screaming. Oh, he was not happy. He came to visit me the next day in my room and let me know he was not happy. It was an absolute mess. But picture this, the minute I got out of the hospital, you know, I had my head taped up and my ribs were taped up, and the first thing I did was drive up to the liquor store, get 2 6-packs of beer, and drive down to the park where we would drink. Now think about this. I just got killed in a drunken driving accident, and the first thing I do is get booze and go drive. It didn't even occur to me that this was a bad idea. You know, we're the type of people who, you know, after we've gotten our 3rd DUI, we say to ourselves, I got to stop driving. You know? I mean, like quitting drinking just never occurs to us, you know? I didn't think about it. You know, so I got you know, my first DUI, I'm out at this place called the Pittstown Inn. Barn dancing, believe it or not. But it's different when you're drunk. Okay, that's what I was out there doing. And I remember some of the last things I remember was I was chugging pitchers of beer. Now, you know, the 26-question pamphlet or whatever, you know, they should put that in there. If you ever chugged pitchers of beer, you might have an alcohol problem. And you know, I was a mess. And I remember I remember the guy who was my designated driver didn't want anything to do with me because I was a wild maniac. So I ended up getting in my car, and I made it about 3/4 of a mile, and I hit some black ice, and the car spun around and hit a bridge abutment going backwards. And I broke through the seat and out the back window. And I come out of it and I like shake my head and I'm laying on the trunk of the car and my legs are still in the car and I'm looking up at the sky going, whoa, this ain't good. I get off the car, I go around, I pry the door open because the car is like bent like a boomerang. There's not a window left in it. The drive shaft is slapping the frame and there's 3 flat tires. But what do you do when something like that happens? You want to go home, right? So I get in and I start driving for home with this car. It's the middle of winter, no windows. And I'm driving down the road and it's going, whack-a-da-book-a-da-bam, whack-a-da-book-a-da-bam. I'm going like about 2 miles an hour. And I go by a cop taking radar. And he's like, he didn't pull me over, he walked me over. I was going so slow. And he comes up and he grabs his arms through the window and he starts shaking me. Like, where did you have that accident? I'm like, what accident, officer? Like, the glass is flying out of my hair. Oh. So he took me down to the station. That was fun. I was always the final owner of every car I ever had. I mean, when I got sober and went to sell a car, I didn't know how to do it. Title, I didn't know how to do it. So anyway, I had a lot of problems with this. I'll skip to my last DUI. I was at a friend's house. One of my college roommates came back up, and we went out drinking. I remember we went to this place called the Gasoline Alley. And when I go out drinking with people, I put a ballast on. I don't want to start, when you start, like out at the bar. I got to start earlier. I got to put a little ballast on. So I show up at this guy's house, and I'm already tanked, and we go off to the bar. And I remember going into the bar and sitting down at the bar, and I'm really hammered. And the bartender comes up and he goes, "What do you have?" And I go, "Bartender, I got to be honest with you. If I were you, I wouldn't serve me." And he goes, "Well, why is that?" I go, "'Cause I'm hammered out of my mind." And the bartender goes, "Well, for being so honest, it's on the house. What do you have?" So I go, "Triple bourbon." Okay. So the bartender takes a glass, does 3 bourbons. There's like this much room in the top, right? And he takes the spritzer of the Coke and he goes, and I go, and he goes like this. I'm like, okay. So I start drinking this, and I'm looking around, how we peruse, and I look around and I see that there's a table of 4 very attractive women who would probably benefit from my company at this point in time, right? So I start heading over, and I'm about 25 feet away, and they notice me coming, and they all go like, like this, like, oh my God! And I make it almost to the table, and I trip on my feet, and I just land on the table and knock the drinks in their lap. I'm like, whoa! They're like, oh my God! My friends grab me, drag me out to the car, stay out here, you're too much trouble. Oh God! So later that night, I'm back at his house. He takes me back home to his parents' house. And his parents don't like me. People didn't like me a lot sometimes, and so I had to go. So I had to drive home. So here I am. I'm driving home, and I'm about a half a mile away from my house, and supposedly I crossed the double yellow. And the lights turn on. I pull over. I roll down the window. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, license, registration, insurance card. Something. I'm like, all right. So it's my mother's car because I crashed mine. And I'm in the glove compartment. I'm looking for the registration and the insurance card. And finally I just give up. This is too much of a to-do, right? So I grab the entire contents of the glove compartment. I go, here! There's like maps and, Kleenex and all this stuff. And cops just don't have any sense of humor, down in New Jersey. He goes, get out of the car! So I get out of the car and do some sobriety things. I end up, do you remember hazy recollections? It talks about hazy recollections in our big book. Well, I'm up at the police station and I have hazy recollections the next day of the sobriety test. And, they had me do the ABCs, and I nailed the ABCs. This is what I remember. I nailed the ABCs. I nailed them. And, it isn't like I learned them when I was 3 or something, but I nailed them. And I ended up with a summons in my pocket, for a DUI. And so I hire a lawyer. Because I nailed the ABCs. They're going to, I'm going to fight this travesty of justice, this thing, right? So I hire a lawyer, and this is back in the early 80s. I had to hire this $1,500 lawyer, 3-piece suit, really professional guy, and he comes over and we go up to the police station and he goes, okay, supposedly they videoed you, so we're gonna look at the video and we're gonna put a case together. So I'm all right, okay. So he goes up and he tells the police, he gets permission to look at the video. And I should have known something was wrong, because when the cop handed the video to the guy, to my lawyer, he went like, so that was not a good sign. That was not a good sign. So what happened was, sure enough, he put the VHS tape in and pushed play, and I went, have you ever seen video of you, like, really drunk? Oh, my God, don't do that. You'll need therapy, for years just to be able to deal with that. It was traumatic for me. And I'm like, and so it's going through all the tests, and the cops are having a blast. They're going, they're like, well, could you walk the straight line? Mr. Schroeder, would you take your hands off the police officer while you're walking the line? I'm like hanging on to the cop, like I'm walking the line. And when it gets to the ABCs, yeah, I nailed the ABCs, all right. I nailed them like this. Can I have a cigarette? I'm like, now this whole time, this $1,500 lawyer he's taking notes. He's making $1,500, right? Well, at the very end, and I don't remember this, but I'm watching it. The very end, the cop goes, Mr. Schroeder, we're going to turn the camera off now, but we want to give you an opportunity to say anything that you need to say. Do you have anything more to say? And sure enough, I look at the camera, and I go, like this, right? I'm like, oh, my God. The lawyer loses it, okay? And he goes, blah! I've never seen anything so stupid in my life. Oh, if you had any chance at all, you just blew it. And I'm like, oh, God. Oh, I guess we'll play, And God, I walked 4 years, 4.5 years later. I was afraid there was going to be like Jetson mobiles, by the time I got my license back. And when I got my license back, it was gone so long, I had to take the driver's test, So I'm standing in line with all these 17-year-olds, I'm like 30, like, hey, lived in the city, never had a car. Oh, just terrible, how we get through all this. And I was so angry at the cop for doing this. Now, recovery, can you imagine? Recovery is a shift in perception. Now I am incredibly grateful he got me off the road. I could have killed not only myself, but, anybody that was on the road. And in that period of time, I was at least safe from, vehicular homicide, that period of time. Oh, my God. Now, I had a lot of other trouble, You may not believe this, but I experimented with some non-conference approved substances. I did grow up in the late 60s and 70s, and they were very plentiful at that period of time. I remember, and I would partake in them in my regular alcoholic nature. Listen, alcohol was there first, and alcohol was there last, but it was all about taking a vacation from the burden of being Chris. And alcohol was my thing, but so were some of these other things. I remember the great Quaalude epidemic of 72. Okay? Here's basically, This is funny. I'm actually doing a workshop in Florida in a couple months with the guy who brought the Quaaludes into school in 1972. Okay, I was making an amends, and this guy goes, "You're making an amends?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Are you in AA?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "So am I." So it was so cool. I hadn't seen him in years. But anyway, his brother gave him a sack of these Quaaludes. Now, if you don't know what Quaaludes are, if you've never had them, picture a 6-pack of beer in a pill. That's really what they were like. So if you took 2 pills, it would be like chugging 2 6-packs of beer in 5 minutes. That's what it was like. So this guy brings in this big sack of pills. His brother had given them to him the night before. He'd never taken them, but his brother said, "Go sell these." So he brings them out, and before first period, we'd be in the smoking area, and he comes with this big sack of pills, and we go, "What are those?" And he goes, "They're Quaaludes." "Oh, well, how much are they?" They could have been dog worming pills. We didn't care back then what a Quaalude was. So, how much are they? "Well, they're $1 a piece." "Okay, how many do you take?" And he didn't know, right? So he goes, 3 or 4. So about 50 of us took 3 or 4 Quaaludes before first period. It caused a problem, The ambulance was back and forth all day. Now, finally, it's about third period, and I'm walking down the hall like this, hanging on to the lockers, going to fourth period. And finally, I figured, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. This is too much. So I see the exit, right? I see exit, and I head for the exit, and I haul ass out. And there's woods, there's like the ball fields, and then there's woods. I got to make it to the woods, and I run out to the woods. And when I get out to the woods, there's people out there hugging the trees. They're already, a whole bunch of them are out there like, whoa, like this. So I'm out there, and we're all passed out, and, the cops and ambulances and everything. Now, the next day at school, I walk in, and everybody's like looking at me laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing about? He goes, "Yesterday when you made a break for the woods?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "It took you 5 minutes to go 100 yards. I thought I was hauling ass." You know what I mean? Oh God. And there was some times also when people allowed me to be over-medicated. I remember this one time we're at a concert in New York City, and this was a crazy mid-'70s. Things were insane back then. And I remember I went to this Foghat Wishbone Ash concert, like at the Beacon or something, okay? And, me and John, the Quaalude guy, decided, hey, let's go into the bathroom, man, and let's buy some acid. Okay, let's do that. So we go into the bathroom, and, we find some people who are selling drugs, and we give them money, and we take them. And we go back and we listen to one song, and we look at each other like, I'm not high. We must have got ripped off. So we go back to the bathroom, okay? We buy more acid, and we're looking for the guys that ripped us off. We buy more acid. We take that. We go back. We listen to one more song, and we go, oh, my God, I think we were ripped off again. Let's go back, because we're kind of drunk, too, right? So we go back, and we buy more. And by the encore of the second band, it starts coming on. Okay? I'm like, whoa! It's like Disney World, okay? So we make it out to the van. We all came in a van, and we get in the van, and we start driving, and nobody's talking. We're like this. And I don't know if anybody's ever gone through the Lincoln Tunnel. Okay? Here's what it is. It's like 12 lanes, 10 lanes, 8 lanes, 6 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes, tunnel. Okay? And we're driving down toward this tunnel, and somebody up toward the front of the van goes, hey, man, we'll never fit. Right? And we all start moving forward. He's right. It's a mouse hole. We'll get stuck. So we start backing out. You ever try to back out of the Lincoln Tunnel? It took us like 45 minutes. Like this. We had to take the bridge. Oh, man. Oh, my God. Probably the worst thing that ever happened to me on this. So listen, I did drugs, but it's the alcohol that really had me. But some of these experiences just show you how crazy I was. I remember this one time I did just the right amount of acid, and you have to be in the right place, and you need to be like with the right stereo, with the right blacklight posters, where it's quiet, and everything's got to be cool. And so I take this stuff and I go home, and I'm getting ready, like this is gonna be cool. And but what had happened earlier that day was, I was driving down to the park where I got this stuff, and I saw a friend of mine in front of me stopped at the stop sign. And he didn't know I was behind him, so I come up behind him and I give him a little bump, like, with the car. And he goes, woo, woo, like this, and he turns around, practical joke. So, I forgot all about that. So I'm sitting in my room like this. Led Zeppelin 1 is on, and I'm like, whoa! And all of a sudden my mother starts knocking on the wall. Hey, the police are on the phone. I'm like, what? What? The police are on the phone. Come down. So I'm coming downstairs, and it's all bright, with the lights on. And I get on the phone. I go, hello? And is this Chris Schroeder? Yes. You got to come up to the police station and file an accident report. I'm like, what? So I go, oh my God. So I go, they know where I have to go, right? So I walk up to the police station. I remember walking up to the police station. It's big, and the doors are like 40 feet high, and the lights are on. And, I open the door, and I go in, and, everything is like, whoa! And I go up to the desk where the cop is, and I go like, he goes, you want to come down here? He goes, okay, come over here. And he goes, here's a pencil, here's a piece of paper. Draw the intersection where the alleged accident took place, right? So here's what I do. I draw the intersection like that big, okay? And he takes it, he goes, no! He goes, here's the intersection. And he starts drawing it really big. And I'm like, no, it wasn't that big. I don't know how I got out of there without, admitting, I was high. But I made it home. I went up to that kid the next day, and he had, one of these, military fathers who would reconnoiter the car when he got home. And he saw a little bit of black rubber, where I gave him the bump. And I go, do you know what you did to me? Oh, my God. Never able to take my own responsibility. The people that I was hanging out with, over the course of time, they went from, regular high school kids to people that didn't even have real names. Toward the end of my drinking, there was Green Man and Weezer. And there was this guy I used to party with called Rat. His name was Rat. But he said it was with 2 T's. Oh my God. And these were the people that I was hanging out with in the last 3 or 4 years of my drinking. It just, it gets so bad over any considerable period of time. Alcoholism always gets worse. It never gets better. And what happens is, your life gets smaller, more decadent, and more dysfunctional. Every single day, just a little bit. It's like incremental. Every day, it just gets a little worse. And you're not really noticing that it's getting worse until your best friend is Green Man. You know what I mean? It's just, I never still to this day don't know his real name. It just, I came out of this just an absolute mess. I remember my last girlfriend when I was drinking. Now, listen, I was not getting a lot of dates, okay? Because by 8 o'clock at night, I was projectile vomiting, and in a blackout, and that's just, sometimes I hear it's not attractive, okay? So I started doing this one thing. This girlfriend of one of my buddies ended up in a prison in Texas, and she became friends with somebody. And when she came back, she goes, "Oh, you'd really like this girl, you should start writing to her." So I started this prison pen pal thing with this girl. Now, if you're new or just coming back, okay, we're not recommending this as a dating method. It did not work very well for me, okay? When she got out, I had her move in with me and Mom, okay, and they didn't get along. Do I need to mention it? Now, this woman was a career criminal. She was one of these people who was a sociopath to the point of not even not understanding right and wrong, not caring. You know, listen, alcoholics, we as alcoholics, we care very deeply. When we do things wrong and we hurt other people, we suffer from that because we do have a conscience. This particular person had no conscience. Just a sociopath. She always wanted to be armed. You know, what do you want to be armed for? You know, we're living in this upper middle class neighborhood. You know, and where I'm telling you that if you got caught walking a dog without a leash, it made the newspaper. One of those type of places. You know, and she wanted to be armed. That ended up not going real well. You know, so. I gotta tell you, she broke up with me. And oh God, those are the days. Now, you know, alcohol was just destroying everything in my life. When you're as critically and as chronically alcoholic as I am, there's no color in the world. The world is shades of gray at best. And there's always problems, and there's always fear, and there's always like physical pain, and there's always mental anguish. And you know, it was getting to the point where I was sitting at my desk at night, and I had a .38 caliber handgun. I don't even know where it came from, but I remember, I would put it to my head, just thinking, I should just end this. I should just get it over with. And for one reason or another, I never pulled the trigger. A lot of us do pull the trigger. A lot of us do, and for one reason or another, I didn't. I had my separation experience. I ended up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I misunderstood so much. I really thought the whole point of Alcoholics Anonymous was not drinking. And everything we did was about continuing to convince each of us that we need to not drink. Now, that is part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please don't misunderstand. But I think that there's more involved with AA. There's the recovery process is designed to change me from the type of person I was, and I had some trouble in AA, in the early days. I was no vision for you in my first 6 months. I got to tell you, I was going to a lot of meetings, but I still had this unbelievably repressed anger. When Bill asks us to inventory our resentments, that resentments are the number one offender. They kill more alcoholics than anything else. I know what that's like because resentments almost killed me, and this is what it looked like when they almost got me. I would judge people in AA meetings, and I would critique particular AA meetings. And, that AA meeting has those people. And, over here at this AA meeting, there's a bunch of high bottoms. They don't know nothing about, us. And there's beer drinkers over at this other meeting. And, I had all these different preconceived judgments on all these groups. And I would get mad. They would have a business meeting. Now, in New Jersey, they had slow, painful, root canal-esque business meetings. You know what I mean? Where people would be mad, where they'd bring all their sponsees to vote one way. And there's all this contention, and, it's like a riot. People yelling. And I'd be in there, and I'd be all caught up in this. I wouldn't know, I wasn't an informed group member. I didn't know which was right or which was wrong. But, I was in there, getting upset. And I would then leave the meeting, I'm not going back there. I wish I had $1 for every alcoholic that did that. I'm not going back there. The only right thing I did was when I left the meeting, I would go to another one. There was some kind of survival instinct at work in me. In my first year, I changed my home group 4 times. And it was always because of them, they were doing it wrong or whatever. And it really what it was, the real problem wasn't that they were doing it wrong. The real problem was my perception. The problem is never the problem. The problem is always how we feel and think about the problem, especially as alcoholics. So anyway, I had problems. I had problems with certain friends and certain home group members, and then all of a sudden I met Mrs. Wright, God's will for me. I had about 14 months sober, and I found this girl who had about 8 months, and she was just out of the halfway house, and I thought, this is going to be great. This is going to be beautiful. This is perfect. She seemed to actually like me, which was always a plus in my book. And I remember we started dating, and that crashed like the Hindenburg in about 2 months. You know what I mean? It was just a brutal bloodbath, and what a mess that was. And what I learned was that I didn't acquire girlfriends. I took hostages. That's what we do as alcoholics. Like, when everything is based on self, what we do is we assign roles to people. Okay, you're going to be the girlfriend, and you're going to be loyal, and you're going to be, and you're going to be, and you're going to be. Well, she wasn't really interested in some of that stuff. So, all of a sudden, the plan wasn't working, So I learned a lot from that. As a sponsor today, I believe where it says in the big book, we're not the arbiters of anyone's sexual conduct. And I know well enough not to tell somebody to get out of a relationship when they get in one, if they're new. Because when you do that, they're just going to leave and mess up 2 other people. You know what I mean? So, leave them alone. A lot of times what will happen is the pain will be so acute that they'll be rocketed into the steps, or, something else. So I don't get too involved in that. I learned from the pain of my first relationship. I sought spiritual solace in the steps. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. As an alcoholic, I ended up being a bad electrician. I mean, that's what I was doing for a living. And when I mean a bad electrician, I'm serious about that. I would blow stuff up on a daily basis. I was like Ignatowski from Taxi. I'd come out, boss, I blew up the garage over at the Lebowski's. I mean, it would always be some debacle like that. I remember this one time, we're doing a series of apartments, and we're having to drill down into the wall to drop a snake down to run a line up for a power antenna. This is back before cable. You'd have to power up these antennas. And I had somebody marking, and I mistook a mark for where I was supposed to drill. And picture these gigantic big drills with an extension and then a really long auger bit. So the drill is up here, and you can get like 4 or 5 feet with the drill. And I remember drilling down, and I remember backing the drill out because it's getting stuck on something. And I'm seeing like cloth or something on the end of the drill. So I go downstairs, and I knock on this guy's door. The guy comes down. He goes, "Oh, what?" I go, "Do you mind if I look around in your house? We're working up in the attic, and I kind of need to look upstairs in your room." So he goes, "Okay." So we go upstairs, and I'm looking around, and I open up his closet doors, right? And I open up the closet, and as soon as I open the door, I see about 30 suits covered with plaster, and one of them's curled up into the ceiling where my drill bit caught, right? So he's like, "God damn it! What are you going to do?" And, I go, "Well, maybe my boss knows a good Martinizer." I didn't know what to do. Oh, my God. I was forever doing... Here's one for you. I was really sick this one morning, but I'm one of these guys who works. You know what I mean? Like, I show up at work. I might not feel really good, but I'm going to work. So I'm at work this one day, and we're putting an electrical panel up on this house. And basically, my job is to put the meter pan and you know the wire up with the weatherhead and all that. And my partner's inside, and he's mounting a panel. Now he's in the truck, and I'm kind of working on this meter pan, and all of a sudden I start going, and I know I've got like 6.4 seconds and I'm going to vomit, right? And he's right over here. I don't want him to, he already thinks I'm lame, you know what I mean? You know, I'm his partner, and I'm always like blowing stuff up and forgetting things. And so he's upset with me. So I don't want him to see me get sick, right? So what I do is I tear around the back of the house. And I just make it around the back of the house. And that morning I had drank a half a gallon of grape drink to rehydrate. You know how you have to like rehydrate when you've been really drunk the night before? So I get around the side and I go, whoa! I'm like a fire hydrant, right? I stuck over the back of this house with like purple vomit, like whoa! All this purple vomit. And, you know, I figured behind the house I would be by myself, right? Well, there's another house back there with a deck. And there's a mother, a father, and 3 kids sitting there drinking iced tea about 20 feet away from me. And they're all like this. Well, you know, Mommy, the purple puke monster from hell, Mommy. You know, and I'm like, you know what, now you don't want to look stupid. You know, so I go and I get a hose, and I'm like, yeah, this always happens on Tuesdays, you know, wash the house down. Oh, God. But things like this are always happen. I remember because of my detoxing from alcoholism, I didn't really know what it was, but in the morning, I'd be like, sure, I'd be like, you know, high tension, nervous, just freak, you know, loud noises, you know, and stuff. I'd be like freak. So I remember going to a doctor this one time, and I go, Doc, wake up in the morning, I'm like nervous, I'm just high strung, I felt like, oh, fuck, really, and the doctor goes, well, hold on a minute, and he takes out his hooter, right, and he puts it on my heart, and my heart's going, like this, right, it's like freaking out because I'm detoxing, and he goes, whoa. He goes, sounds like you've got a protracted mitral valve, you know, with acute anxiety. And I'm like, sounds good, Doc. You got anything for that? You know, and he goes, yeah, we've got this new drug. It's called Xanax. And I go, well, what kind of milligrams you got that in, Doc? I'm going to need the big ones, you know. And so he gives me this prescription of Xanax. Now, within 5 minutes, I'm not even counting them anymore. You know? I'm pouring them into my hand and weighing them. It feels like enough, you know? Because I was nervous. And right on the pill bottle, it said no alcohol in gigantic letters, bigger letters than the name of the drug, right? No alcohol. Because I pour them out and I drink a quart of vodka with them, you know? And I got to tell you, when you do that, you get limber. You know what I mean? You get noodled. And I didn't know a sober moment for like 6 months when I was on this, okay? And I remember this one time, you know, I allowed myself to be over-medicated. And, you know, I think I took the whole bottle, you know, like 40 of them or something, you know, drinking too. But I'm a worker, right? I work. And I remember going up to the top of the street. I was in between driver's licenses. Going up to the top of the street and waiting for my buddy to pick me up. He'd drive past me and pick me up and take me to work. And when he saw me and I got in the truck, he looked at me like, oh, my God, you should go home. You know, you can't work. I'm like, the hell with you. I'm going to work. And he goes, okay. And he drives to work. Now picture this. There's this big glass window with the boss. And then there's a long parking lot, and all the vans are parked there. And you park down behind the vans. And you come up and you get your work assignment from the boss, you know, up in the shop. And I'm walking serpentine, all right? I'm walking like this up to the shop. And I see my boss turn around, and he does this. God damn it! And he comes out and he starts yelling at me for being hammered out of my mind. And he's like, somebody take him home! You know, so I'm being embarrassed in front of my peers. And, you know, what a mess that was. So, you know, I was so embarrassed about this that, you know, I stopped doing the Xanax. Oh, God. You know, so one of the reasons I don't identify as a drug addict is because when the time came and I got too noodled, on these benzos, I stopped doing them. And when I smoked enough pot to get like paranoid, I stopped smoking it. And when I did enough cocaine, my jaw wouldn't move, and I'd be on the same sentence 3 days later. I stopped doing it. And what happened was the thing that was left at the end was the booze, just drunk all the time. Oh my God, it got to the point, it was so pathetic, it got to the point where it was too much of a to-do to get up from my desk and go into the bathroom to vomit. So I would just open up the window and outside, there's like sidewalks going to a retirement community. And I'm like, whoa, like puking out the window, they're like, whoa. It was just really, really bad. Now, I'm in AA. I get myself a sponsor. I talked a little bit the other night about how I got exposed to the 12 steps, and I start coming to. I start, realizing just how tragic my life was. One of the things is we just don't know how much trouble we're in. And I didn't either. But as I started to get better, I started to see just how tragic and how sick I was. So. I'm going through the steps, and I'm hanging out in the AA meetings, and I don't really know what was going on in our area, but there were a whole lot of discussion meetings. I think what happened was this. In the early days, between 1939 and 1941 or 2. Really, the big book was our only literature, and when you wanted to understand how Alcoholics Anonymous worked, that's really what you would go to. Now, the 12 and 12 gets published, and I think from the day the 12 and 12 was published, some people started to take their eyes off of the ball being the instructions in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Even in the introduction to the 12 and 12, it says this book was written to broaden and deepen the concepts of the steps that were laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not meant to, it's not meant to wipe out the power of the big book or the importance of the big book. It's just a series of essays that Bill wrote basically to get you to buy the 12 traditions, because that was really his motivation in writing those essays on the steps. But what happened was, by the mid-50s, most Alcoholics Anonymous members had the 12 and 12. And they started to use it as a meeting format. There's a mathematical simplicity to it. There's 12 steps. You can do a step a week for 12 weeks. You can go through the book 4 times in a year. There was mathematical sense to the whole thing. So that's what started to happen. There was a lot of step meetings. Now, when I got sober in '89 in our area, there were step meetings galore. There was one big book meeting 3 towns away, and in that meeting, what you would do is you would read a paragraph and you would share, and you would go through the entire big book. So like 3/4 of the big book at that period of time was stories. So what would happen was you'd be in the stories for a year, and it wasn't what I would consider a good big book meeting today. It was go through the whole book, kind of like you go through the step book, from page 1 to the end of the book. And what happened was, in our area, people started to sponsor in an oral tradition fashion. What I mean by that is, my sponsor, Harvey Gerbilfeather, told me that I should just keep it simple. So I'm keeping it simple. And, and he also told me I should do a step a year, because he doesn't want to really work with me, and, that'll keep me busy. So things like that were going on in our area, and I was going to a whole bunch of 12 and 12 meetings, and I was getting really confused about everything. And, I was deteriorating. Spiritually, I was deteriorating inside. The going to meetings was keeping me sober. I believe that. But I was still just tragically dry drunk, that was just suffering so grievously from untreated alcoholism. I get involved with the Joe and Charlie work. I move my way through the Joe and Charlie work, and I start to sponsor some guys. I talked about that a little bit this morning, and my life started to really change. Recovery is really the goal here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Full recovery is really the goal. Sobriety is a great thing. It helps us get out of the jackpot. It keeps us from going back to jail. It may keep us in the big bed. There's a lot of things that staying sober might do. But recovery offers us a new freedom and a new happiness. It offers us serenity. At times, I have great serenity. My life today is just crazy. Like, I went from being a bad electrician to when I got sober, I got involved in maintenance work instead of construction. And getting involved in that maintenance work, I started to get promoted because I was actually there, and I was actually present. And I could actually hear people when they were giving instructions and things like that. And I started to do pretty well with that. Today, 23 years later, I'm a facility manager for a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant. And this is a very, very responsible type of a job. I've got a ton of employees, a ton of responsibility, a huge budget, and reports and all. This is a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility. I wouldn't have even wanted a job like this when I got sober. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to put in my 8 hours and go home and be able to forget about it. But for one reason or another, I truly believe that God fits us to be of maximum service to our fellow man. And that's kind of what happened to me. And without having undue amounts of ambition, and really trying to do this stuff, I basically fell from one good job to a better job to a better job to a better job, and today I'm doing quite well with that. Friends, I know who my friends' names are now, and it's amazing some of the friends that I have and how close I am with them. That's a really good thing. I got involved with some professional addictive illness stuff. I'm on some boards, but I'm also consulted quite often when families have kids that are in trouble. One of the things that's going on in a big way down by us now, tell me if it's happening here, is there's an oxy epidemic, whether it's oxycodone or MS-Cotton or whatever, and these are some serious painkillers. They're nicknamed hillbilly heroin, down by us. And what's happening is a lot of these kids are getting hooked on them in high school, and they're getting hooked on them. And when they run out, they're gonna start detoxing, and they're gonna start feeling like they've got a bad case of the flu for days if they can't get this drug. So the next thing that they learn is you can go down to one of the cities and you can find heroin. So there's an epidemic in our area. I'm talking about the upper middle class areas. People who can't even imagine that their kids would be doing drugs are shooting heroin. And I'm a resource for a lot of these people because I have relationships with a number of really, really good recovery centers. Some treatment centers, but more often recovery centers. And I help these parents get these kids treatment. It's an epidemic, so I'm doing a lot of good there. One of the things that the company that I work for does is it manufactures two drugs. One of them is Diavan, and it's a high blood pressure medication, and it saves a lot of lives. But the other drug is called Cortem. Cortem is a drug that will treat and quite often, more often than not, cure malaria. Now, on the planet today, the number one killer on the planet today is the mosquito, believe it or not, and what the mosquito will drag around with it. It doesn't necessarily happen a lot in the United States because we DDT'd the absolute crap out of those mosquitoes. And we wiped out malaria and everything else in the 20s. But other areas of the world that weren't allowed to use DDT the way we did still have huge malaria problems. And this Cortem, the World Health Organization, buys it and sends it to these third world countries. And I'm telling you, 2,000 lives a day are probably saved because of this particular drug. And what my job is to keep this plant running. I'm in charge of the utilities. I'm in charge of the maintenance. I'm in charge of all the stuff, all the projects and repair contractors and all the stuff that keeps this place humming. That's what I'm responsible for. Now, think about that. I went from a bad electrician that would drill into your clothes closet, to having a job like this and being okay with a job like this. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Today I truly understand the word recovery. Doug was talking today about the 10th and 11th step. I absolutely love the 11th step. And for the last 20 years, I've been seriously studying different kinds of spirituality, comparative religion, Eastern philosophy and meditation, and especially first century Christianity, because that's really where Alcoholics Anonymous came from. And I'm studying this stuff, and I'm finding things to apply in my life. And I'm developing, a spirituality that I can really call my own, and that I can really make my own. And I've got to tell you, there's an enormous amount of comfort in that. And that's really why we drank. We drank for that comfort. We drank for that ease and comfort. And I find that same comfort that I was looking for in a bottle that was very elusive. Because I might drink number 7 may give me that comfort. But I've got to drink number 8 and I become a vomiting pig. So I would blow past the comfort into vomiting pig. So it never worked right. Now, practicing and developing these methods of spirituality that I do today, it's a very holistic way to get that comfort, to feel comfortable inside. The alcoholic has a hole. There's a vacancy inside the alcoholic. And we try to fill that vacancy with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, with food, with anything and everything, just to try to put something in there so I feel good. For a long time, I used to spend money and buy things because they would make me feel good for 5 minutes, just purchasing something. And I found that hole, the only thing that fills that hole is a relationship with and the consciousness of the presence of God. Because it's a God hole. God made us, I believe God made us to want and need God. And when we rebel against that, it creates a disturbance in our force. One of the great early Christian theologians, St. Augustine, said basically, God, our hearts are troubled until they rest in Thee. And I think Augustine was probably an alcoholic because my heart was restless until it rested, in God. It talks about the consciousness of the presence of God is the most important thing in our lives. The most amazing thing about this whole Alcoholics Anonymous is the amount of power that's available through this power greater than myself. My conception of God has changed greatly over the years. My first conception when I showed up here was I believed God was a white-haired old man sitting on a throne up in the clouds with St. Peter and a big ledger, keeping track of what the Schroeder kid's been doing, I mean, that's really what I thought. And when my sponsor first asked me to start praying to this God, I'm like, why? I don't want him to know where I am, I mean, it was just a crazy, wacky conception of God. Today, my conception of God is less of a noun and more of a verb. In other words, I don't believe in that God anymore. I don't believe that God exists, the white-haired man up there on the throne. But I believe everything is godliness. You know what I mean? Like I'm experiencing God's grand design right here at this moment. This is a remarkable group of people. This will never happen again. This group with the same people. It's a marvelous experience, and it's just amazing that we're all here. You know, I used to think I was the center of the universe. See, here's the truth. Here's the truth of that. We live on a planet. It's not even the biggest planet in our solar system. Okay, we've got a sun. It's not anything even remarkable really in our galaxy. You know, as a matter of fact, we're not even near the center of the galaxy. We're way on the outside of the galaxy. And our galaxy isn't even in the center of the universe. It's one of the galaxies that's kind of out on the end. It's not even near our galaxy isn't even in the center of the universe. And I thought I was the center of the universe. You know, I'm not even in a galaxy near the center of the universe, you know? And you know, I understand that today. I understand what my place is. And my place is to be a spiritual being having a human experience and trying to do the best I can and trying to help other people. And I'm going to get through this human experience, and it'll come to an end. And you know, I will go into that next room, you know, whatever that looks like, and you know, I'm okay with that. And, you know, I am really about the business of enjoying life today. Listen, if you're new or you're just coming back and you feel restless, irritable, and discontented, and you're not really getting along with people, and your boss is an idiot, and there's maniacs on the road, and, you know, there's all this, like, disturbance, please stay and try Alcoholics Anonymous. What you may be suffering from is untreated alcoholism. That's what I was suffering from. And there is a treatment for it, and that treatment is marvelous to experience. Incredible things can happen in your life. You know, how free do you want to be? How far do you want to go? It's all available in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, thank you for being here. Willie, thank you so much for bringing this up. Great food, great people. I absolutely love this place. All right, we're going to get started.
We have one announcement to make.
Doug has an announcement here.
One announcement. One of the announcement is it's a housekeeping announcement. I think that's what Joyce/Joanne has told me. If anyone catches a crab with a cell phone with a claw, it's Blair's. That'll be Jimmy.
Oh boy. Okay. I just want to say again that this has been a marvelous weekend. I get the opportunity. I'm very lucky. I get the opportunity to do some of these throughout the year, and rarely, I'd say never, you know, have I been in the presence of such hospitality and just innate spirituality. There's something that is going on in this area that has really been marvelous to experience. We've had a great time, and we want to thank you for you know, giving us the opportunity to come up here and be part of your world for a weekend. Thank you so much. And I've never seen this many questions in an Ask It basket. So participation is really good also. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read these. And Doug and I might both answer the question. One of us might answer the question. We'll just see how it goes. Okay, why aren't the 12 concepts of service talked about more often in AA? You know, that's a pretty good question. You know, I really like Bill's writing in the 12 concepts. There are. It's a little wordy and it's a little bit sometimes difficult reading, but I still think some of his best writing is in the service manual, the 12 Concepts for World Service. But there's something that I use a lot that comes out of that manual, and I'll share about it right now. I believe in the 12th concept there's warranties, and I believe it's in warranty 6. I could be wrong about that because I'm numerically dyslexic. I'm the opposite of Doug when it comes to numbers. never ever trust me if I'm quoting numbers or statistics. But anyway, it's basically a principle that does not allow us to offer any punitive action against a group or an AA member. Now, this is important. This is important because it's about non-punishing. It's about we don't punish people. You know where the punishment comes from? Through non-adherence to spiritual principles. You know who the punisher is? The punisher is alcohol. We don't necessarily need to be the police or the judge, the jury, or the executioners. So there are principles like that in the 12 concepts that I think it's important for us to know about. And as a sponsor, I recommend to the people that I sponsor to get the 12 concepts, get the service manual, and at least read it one time. Obviously, it's used more for general service and world service applications, but again, I believe that there's 36 spiritual principles that are listed out. The 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and the 12 concepts for world service.
There's everything you could do is a circle and a triangle in AA, right? So we have the recovery unity service, and we have the steps and traditions in the concepts, and so I've studied those. I never really studied the concepts before because the highest level that I've ever gotten in the AA service triangle was intergroup, and I like working in the pits, the home groups, the smaller version. But I hear, and for those people like Blair who are in the area and districts, I hear there's a lot of learning up there. I just feel that I didn't have the patience enough to, I have a hard enough time keeping my mouth shut in intergroup. Can you imagine me in district and area, and, people not knowing who I think I am, and I'm like, really? So once again, it comes back to knowing your limitations, and I sure know my limitations there.
And in the concepts and in the service structure of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's protections. They slow things down a little bit because very rarely do you get as many people with gigantic overinflated egos and power-driven maniacs, and they all jump into the service structure. And inherent in that service structure is protections to slow things down, so you can't get some power driver trying to change the way AA works. Because we will try, because we've got a better idea about how things go. All right, let's see what we got here. Doug, this is for Doug. Why do you consider us to be the chosen ones so much?
That's a good question. I believe on this planet that we're on, that we're all equals. I read the Bible, and it says the Jews are the chosen one. I don't think God plays favoritisms. I really don't think God cares. I think He came up with this massive DVD, and there's a quadrillion billion ways that we can run our life, and whichever way we choose, we choose. To have a free adherence to anything we desire to do, I think that's what He or she meant for us, and so. To blame weather, to blame bad luck, to blame my father beat me like a slave. I could have went that route. I could have been a product of the state, and I chose not to. And when I came into AA, I heard a different message than trudging the road to happy destiny, as you all have heard me. I heard a message of I could do anything I desire, anything, and. When I opened up my first large restaurant, it was big, and it was a massive bar. And I remember a guy came up to me once in AA and said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "Well, actually, no. I'm an airline pilot." And that's not what he meant. He meant, no. You're an alcoholic opening up the biggest nightclub in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I'm like, yeah. I didn't get what his point was. And his point was, how are you going to do that? Because he thinks of AA as limiting. I think of AA as all exclusive. And I went to page 100 and 101 in the big book, and it says we can even go to whoopee parties. But it always has a so long as or a contingency, as long as we're spiritually fit. So as long as I'm praying and meditating in the morning, as long as I'm helping others, I can do anything I desire, right? So to have all this power that we have been tapped into, most non-alcoholics, and I don't like calling them normal people, show me the fulcrum point. The fulcrum point on an airplane means I could balance it with one finger. That there's a fulcrum point on every. So tell me the fulcrum point of who's normal. Really? Define normal to me. I mean, there is no normality, right? There's choices that we make. And I believe once you get into Alcoholics Anonymous, they're literally unlimited. Come with unlimited choices means that we have to watch out for ourselves, right? We have to take responsibilities for our actions. And I believe that with all my heart. Being the chosen one of AA is that we have found something that people look at us like, you're different. People say to me, you're so different to do business with. You're so different to hang around with. It's because I literally take these steps, these traditions into all my affairs. And what is the world full of? 1% alcoholics, maybe? 1%, 2%?
Almost 10.
Really? A lot of chunks out there. But now let's talk about recovered ones. So if you're a recovered alcoholic working the steps in the triangle, I mean, you're definitely the chosen one, because it's like playing the game and you know the ending, right? So that's why I can do so well in business, because I believe I know the ending to each one of the games I start. Treat people well, treat them with respect, give a great product, give great service at a reasonable price. Duh. I always say it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, although I got an aerospace engineering degree. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, and I learned all this through AA. So being part of the chosen, like we are, with this, when you have an allergic reaction to peanuts, you don't have to work a 12-step program, all right? So thank God I'm allergic to alcohol, because I had to work a 12-step program, which gave me this unbelievable light, i.e. the chosen one. And I really, that solidified it when my mother died, and I saw the reaction of my sisters, non-alcoholics, and me, saying, God, that was beautiful. I mean, that death was beautiful. I want to go out like that, minus the teaspoon of martini she wanted, but I wanted to go out like that, right? Only chosen people can speak like that. And do I mean chosen by God? Maybe I mean lucky.
Why are we the chosen ones? Well, I was once lost and now I'm found. You know what I mean? Like think about that. The despair of the alcoholic approaching his or her bottom. Mother Teresa was once asked, what is the worst and most tragic thing you've ever seen? And her response was, the loneliness of the dying alcoholic. Now think about that. Mother Teresa, was involved with leper colonies and, children starving to death. And she said the most horrible thing that she ever saw was that despair and that loneliness within the alcoholic. And I believe it's because of that sense of separation, that being so far away from God, being so lost. And here we are, we get exposed to a recovery process that brings us back into the sunlight of the Spirit. And here we are, we're now in the sunlight of the Spirit, and we understand gratitude at a personal, experiential level. And, we move through our life. We start businesses. We manage people. I manage a lot of people, and I'm involved in a lot of things. But I don't take it, as life and death serious. I understand that this is all a gift of God, and I need to be about the business of helping God's children, because that's probably what I'm going to be judged on if I do get judged at the end of this game. It's going to be on have I taken seriously the directive to help God's children, and I do try to do that. So are we chosen? I'm not 100% sure that we're chosen. I think the grace of God falls on everyone equally. I think though that we pay attention to it because our lives depend on it sometimes. You know what I mean? What do we have here? Well, okay, here's a good one. Will sobriety make my ass look big? Okay.
No.
Well, Doug is going to answer this one.
That was a good one. Thanks, Willie. We're going to give that to Willie. Why don't we talk about sex more often in meetings? I guess because it's just very uncomfortable. As you start bringing people through the steps, and look at this, I just happened to open up the sex here. It says that we need an overhauling there. You think? I mean, so people talking about this is probably very uncomfortable. So you got to make sure that the person coming in that's in front of you will know. And there's a lot of times, especially when I'm sponsoring women, I should say bringing them through the steps, when it comes up to the sex inventory, it really rocked my world. I remember the first one that I did, her name was Jen, and Jen will listen to this tape because she listens to all my tapes. Jen's from Sarasota, Florida. And I had to call up my sponsor immediately. He says, go into meditation real quick and ask for it to be removed and forget what you heard. And I did, and it rocked my world. And I didn't know if I ever wanted to do that one again. And then all of a sudden, Jen had 12 years of sobriety, and she had never worked the steps, and she works the steps through me. And all of a sudden, this lady, Meg, comes up to me and says, I want you to do to me what you did to Jen. I'm like, well, let's rephrase that one, okay? And I would have them come over to my house when my wife was present. And before you know it, there were 2 girls there, and then there was 3, and then there was 8, and then there was 12, and it was just, we were changing lives. And I was talking to Joanne about this, about sponsoring women. If you could look at another person as a soul instead of as a physical being, it really, you could change a lot of lives. Because as Dr. Bob did with 5,000 men and women, he changed a lot of lives. And Chris could maybe talk about this too. In the women community, the sponsorship is a little shallow. And so by giving them a great foundation, you can help them build the depth of their lineage. And so to speak about sex is very uncomfortable because a lot of us have these deep, dark secrets in the sex thing. And I've seen more people. I was just speaking to a young lady, and she was talking about how she worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, have you told your deepest, darkest secrets in 4 steps? She said, no. And I said, have you finished your 9 steps? She said, no. So I said, you haven't even started. She hasn't even hit start yet. And so once she does, it's going to be changing of her life. And the sex thing almost set me out for what I did in 1984. And by speaking to another sponsor through it, by making the amends as I did by going up on that hill for women that were abused and helping for 6 months, it really changed my life. So I think that's why.
When we're early on and we first get sober, there's like a drive. We have that sex drive, and we want to get a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And what I usually say to the people I'm working with is, 2 ding-a-lings don't make a bell. You know what I mean? Now I want to tell this story. This is a true story now. This young woman, she's sober about 90 days. She goes up to her sponsor and she goes, listen, I know all about this, no relationships in the first year or whatever, but I want a man. I want to start dating, and I'm serious about this, and I want some help. So the sponsor knows that this is a losing battle, so we'll do the best we can to manage this. So Doug talked about the instructions for sexual relationships being on page 69 yesterday, right? So this woman's sponsor says, okay, go home and read page 69. Now this girl's on the way home, and she's numerically dyslexic like myself, so instead of going to page 69, she goes to page 96. And I'm just going to read what it says on page 96. It says, do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. And it says, he may be broke or homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. I just love that. That's from the late great Joe and Charlie, by the way. I stole that. Anyway, let's see. So now we've covered sex. You'll know exactly what to do. Chris, how did you end your mood-altering shopping? Ooh, wow, that's awesome! What a great question. Now listen. We have that vacancy that I talked about last night, and a lot of times we need to try to fill that to make us feel good. Now, it's an inside job, though. It's not something that can be done by outside stuff. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about what I did when I got sober. I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I was spending most of it on stuff for me. For the first 5 years of my sobriety, I lived at home with Mom, like most macho guys in their 30s do, And but finally, I did run away from home and with a woman, and we shacked up and we got married. But I was still spending a majority of my money on CDs and books and just acquiring and ordering stuff through the mail. And it was ridiculous. It was near hoarding. And what happened personally to me was you hit a bottom. You hit a bottom with these sprees. It talks about having sprees in the big book. And the sprees don't necessarily have to be alcohol sprees. They can be sex sprees or shopping sprees or gambling sprees. Or, we can do food sprees. We can do a lot of spreeing. And what happened was I just hit a bottom. I just hit a bottom, and I've always asked God for help with running my life. God is my director. God is my Father, and these were the third step decisions that I basically made. And one day, the obsession to add stuff into my life from the outside to make me feel better was removed. Like a lot of my character defects. Now, I used to think you needed to work on your character defects. You need to fight these character defects until you win. But the fact of the matter is you got to kind of go around the back, and you prayer and meditation and working with others and step work and meetings and God sometimes removes these defects of character. We have to participate. It says in the step book that God will not render us white as snow without our cooperation. So we have to cooperate, but we can't go head on. And I tried so often to go head on with this stuff. And me working on my own character defects looked like this. Does anybody in here know what the game whack-a-mole is? You take the mallet and, a mole head will pop up and you'll try to smack the mole, but the mole will drop down and another one will pop up. That was me trying to work on my character defects by, a frontal assault. I was playing whack-a-mole, and, I had a spiritual advisor one time that came up to me and said, Chris, you know what will happen if you keep whacking the mole like that? And I go, what? He goes, you could go blind. So I learned my lesson. Right, Doug? Let's see. What is the funniest newcomer plan you heard?
The funniest newcomer plan. You got one. I'll pick one.
Damn, let me think. Some of them really are buttes.
I got it.
Okay. He's got it.
It's all about me. So I get this guy in Sarasota, Florida, and he comes up to me and says, they all come to me and they're shaking. I always got the shaking guys. Like, the other sponsors are like, oh, we don't want this guy. Go see Doug. You know what I mean? And so I had this newcomer guy come up to me and he says, I've tried this a million times and I'm over it. And I said, okay, come over to my house Saturday between 10 and 2. And this time I used to do it in my house. And he comes over to the house and he had about, you really, in the big book it talks about in the sponsorship part, working with others, it says you really got to get them down when they're low. I should have taken over the house then, but I didn't. So he had 3 days to think about this, right? And so he comes over to my house and he says, I said, where's your big book? He says, well, I wanted to talk to you. I said, okay. what do you want to talk about? He says, well, I understand what you do. I said, no, you don't. So let's just start there and tell me what you're thinking. He says, well, I found this procedure. This is an honest to God truth. He goes, I found this procedure in Tampa. And he went and did it. And he says, I'm going to go to this procedure. And what they do is they take out your blood and replace it. And I looked at him just like I'm looking at you. What? He goes, they take out your blood and they replace it. They replace
Keith Richards' recovery.
So they take out your blood and replace it. Well, I never heard of this before. And so what does that do? So all the detoxes and stuff are out of me. And so then I'm good. I'm like, but what about your mind? And he says, I didn't think about that one. We have to change the obsession of the mind. Now your blood is good. You know, what about your mind? All right? Why don't you eat a carrot and come over to my house? Or put that carrot somewhere. I don't care. Just get over here and work this thing. I never saw him again.
I'm thinking about this. This is a good question. I'm thinking about this. But, most of the time, the newcomer plans are more tragic than they really are funny. And, because some of them are absolute beauts. I did start to work with this one guy who really, really did want to go tour with the Dead. I mean, he wanted to go tour with the Grateful Dead, and he did that every year, and he didn't see any problem with doing that. And he was sober like 10 days, and, off he went. And when he got back, he had done so many drugs, he could barely talk anymore. He was like, it was like, beautiful, beautiful move, buddy. And let's not maybe do that next season. But some of them are just really, really tragic. Listen, we die. Look, I've lost a lot of people this year. And I was just on the phone. I was just doing a placement this morning with somebody who, get this, after 8 years, spent a lot of time in prison, got out of prison, started to put a business together, got hired by a big company, had a big, important job, and ended up basically relapsing. And he relapsed because he was living with a woman, and they were engaged, and they were going to get married, but he met up with somebody, and he was having that affair on the side, And listen, those things take us out pretty quick. And that's what happened with him. He ended up drinking one night and smoking crack, and his whole world fell apart. So I got him a place in a 90-day treatment opportunity in Texas, and got him there. And he's in the place, and 15 minutes into it, he goes, I got to get out of here, and he leaves. And he finds his way back home, and he expects to go back to his job, which he told his job he had a drug problem and he needed to go away for 90 days. And the next day he's back like, well, it's not really a problem. And he wondered why he got fired. And I just get a call from him. I get a call from him this morning, and he wants to go back. He wants to go back to Texas. And I go, buddy, you blew that up, all of us were saying the same thing. You need help. You can't just do the right about face and stop smoking crack and drinking whiskey. You're just not going to be able to just do that because you want to. Why weren't you listening to us? And he's starting to get it now, but it's going to be a much more difficult row for him to hoe at this point in time.
In the big book, it talks about, it says, if you could do a turnabout, our hats are off to you, right? I couldn't. If you could do a turnabout, that means you're not an alcoholic, and my hat's off to you, There's a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, I'd say probably about 10 times in my 18 years that I've taken people through the step every weekend, where I actually turned a guy away and said, you're not an alcoholic. You're a hard drinker at best. You've had a hard situation. Non-alcoholics do what you do, and then they just stop, or they moderate. And I've seen a couple of guys in Florida. One was a pretty powerhouse attorney, and he's doing just fine. And he's got a wife, he's got kids, and he wanted to join our way of life. And I said, no, I can't allow you non-alcoholics in here because they're going to kill us. Because the real people the real deal that's in here right now. And this guy says, take it easy. Of course we're going to take it easy. I got one here that says workshop $25. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, it's yours.
It's a deal.
I thought it was 35. It was only 25 bucks? 25 bucks for all this? What up? All right, done. Whoa. All right, here we go. Everybody got a couple hours? Infatuated with flights and surprised I never got kicked off a plane for being hammered. You mentioned Friday night you lost a phone.
A plane.
All right, how the heck did you... Wow, here we go.
We got trouble losing the plane story.
Losing the plane story. You know what? I did get thrown off a plane. Are you out of here?
Yeah, thanks, guys.
It's absolutely...
Take care.
Blair. Area Blair. Go report back how great we are so we can come back here next year. With only 4 flights, 9 trains.
Remember warranty 6.
26 tug.
26 tug. All right, so I actually did get thrown off a plane for being too drunk, so I'll tell that story too. I was with my dear friend, dear best. I had one best friend, right? Who's just his name was Tony D. Giovanni. He's a non-alcoholic, and he stuck with me. He was a United captain, and him and I went to college together, and we lived together. And I went to my airline, and he went to United. And I got back from speaking in Bermuda last year, and I found out that he drowned, saving his child. And his child's living, he's dead. And that was just devastating to me. The chief pilot of United called me up, and he said he used to talk about me so much, about the old Doug days. They had stages of Doug. Doug 1 was, I'm like, rock on, party! Stage 2, I was like buying women drinks, but it was at women drink-free days, And then Doug 3, they call it D3. D3, there he is, like, and then D4. Peeing myself and falling off him. So he used to have a lot of stories with me. So anyway, we were playing golf in Washington, and he says, I want king crab legs, Alaskan king crab legs. I'm like, then let's go to Alaska, because we can do that. So, we pack up a bag, and we go to United, and he gets on for free. And, of course, I'm a union airline pilot, and they throw me in first class. So him and I are in first class, and first stop was Seattle. And by the time we got to Seattle, because you drink free up in first class, we're hammered. Captain gets us in the back, throws us off the airplane. They had to get a wheelchair for me to walk me off the airplane. And I'm like... D4, right? My buddy Tony's in his pilot uniform walking me like, hat on sideways. So we sobered up in Seattle for 2 days, and this was in July, and then we fly into Anchorage, Alaska, and there's all these pictures of just me, kissing all these women, and I don't remember. I'm on a glacier. And so what they would do is I'd be passed out, and they'd put me in the car and put a hat on me or put like a dress on me. And just like I was like this little doll they were bringing around. They put me in, they put a bra over my head, like this, pictures of that. And I'm just like, in every picture. So I get on the plane to come back to Washington, and I hop on a Northwest flight, and the plane was full, and I had to sit in the cockpit. And so I'm sitting in the cockpit, and the captain, the first officer go, God, you stink, did you shower? And I don't think I did. I don't remember. But I was flying for this corporation out of Morristown, New Jersey, and I was flying a pretty cool airplane, and I was certified to fly by myself, which is really cool. And I dropped these guys off in Nantucket, which is a really upscale island off the Boston coast. It's really beautiful. The only way in is through a plane. And so I'm coming back, and then there's thunderstorms, and I had to land in a little airport off of Long Island, New York. And so I get off the airplane. First thing I do is I forget to close my flight plan. So now they're like scrambling the F-16s. Everybody's coming in, all the dispatchers. Where's Doug? And I met a really fun cab guy and a couple of pilots, and we're like, let's get a drink, And before you know it, I wake up, I'm on a floor, I have no idea where I am, my hat's on backwards, my stripes are on crooked, my tie's around my head, and I'm like, and it's daytime, and like 12 hours are missing, and they think I'm like in the middle of the sound, dead. And I'm like, and I run back to the airport. I get in the cab, and I'm looking for my airplane. And I couldn't. They moved the airplane, and I'm running up and down this place. Where's my plane? I'm looking around. I can't find the plane. I finally get on the plane, and I'm just like, and I'm starting the engines, and the engines are so loud. And I'm like, you know what I mean? And I had no passengers. I was just going to kill me. And so I take off, and I like barely put up the landing gear, and I just hit autopilot. I'm like, we're getting sick, and I'm throwing up. It was bad to see. So I find my way back to Morristown. I get off. There's police, there's fire trucks, there's the FAA, there's the Navy, there's the Air Force, all like, Doug was such a great guy, he was a good man. And I come walking off the airplane, and I fall down the stairs, I'm like, I'm back. Needless to say, I found the plane and got fired on that one.
Oh, man. I can tell you a plain story. I'm sponsoring this one knucklehead who's a relapser. He relapses all the time, and he's a heavy drinker, but he also does a lot of benzos, right? So he's on a plane flying from like New York to L.A. or something, and he passes out. And I mean, he passes out. You know how when you pass out, nobody can wake you up. Well, they try to wake him up, and they can't wake him up. So they go, "Is there a doctor? Is there a doctor?" They get a doctor. Doctor walks over and goes, "You got to get this guy down. Land this plane. This guy could die, right? He took too many drugs or something." So they land the plane in like Omaha or something, right? And they have to wheel him off. He comes to in a hospital. He leaves, and he's driving around with a taxi driver or something, and he crashes a party. And this is a party for the governor-elect of Colorado who just got elected, right? He crashes the party. Somehow he just walks in. We can just walk into places. And he walks in and he sits down next to the governor for like the whole evening. And the Secret Service people thinks he's with the governor. And the governor thinks he's like a Secret Service guy because he's got like a military haircut. And there's pictures of him in the paper like this. Like the whole thing. And he comes back and he's telling me all this. I'm like, dude, you got to work the steps. You know what I mean? Your life is unmanageable. You're like with the governor-elect, What are you doing? You could have been arrested. Unbelievable. How can we attract and keep more young people in AA? That's a great question, and it's incredibly important, too. I really believe we need to be about the business of keeping the meetings interesting, and we can do that by putting together formats that keep on topic. You know what I mean? Like what happened when I first started coming around down in New Jersey in the late 80s. What was going on was there was the closed-minded discussion meeting. Does anybody know what the closed-minded discussion meeting is? That's basically where a bunch of people raise their hand and they tell, well, I was out pruning my rose bushes and my neighbor, and you're like, who cares? Who cares about you and your neighbor and your rose bushes? Kill me now. I want to die. Now, what I really believe is important is for us as chair people with meetings to actually chair the meeting and try to keep it on topic. And you don't have to be rude doing it. You don't have to say something like "shut up, stupid." You can kind of direct the meeting back to the topic. And I think when we stay on topic, we can keep the meeting interesting, and young people will be more responsive. Like when it's a bunch of old people sitting around talking about how dull their day was, we're not going to be attracting the young people. And there's got to be activities and things like dances and stuff like that really help. But again, there is a tsunami of problems heading for young people today. It starts with the Oxycontins. It starts with passing around diverting pharmaceuticals. That happens like crazy these days. It happens in the junior high and high school, and there's a whole herd of young people that are going to be heading toward us and toward the other 12-step fellowships that we're going to need to make feel welcome, and we're going to need to be able to offer them some help because there's an epidemic, there's a tsunami heading our way, and it has to do with just how powerful a lot of these painkiller medications are and how easy they are to get. And it's that may not be alcoholism, pure and simple. But what it is it's something that many of us can help people with.
It also comes back to this free will thing that we got going on here in the world. And I believe when God said that we have free will, He really means that. I mean, it's free will. What part of free will are we missing? And so, as sober alcoholics, I have two children. They're 22 and 21. They're 11 months apart. And I got sober when they were 3 and 2. And I was just, I was all over them, with love and kindness. And I broke the mold of abuse. And I'll tell you a quick story. My older son just graduated Florida State University. He's going to University of South Carolina Law School. And he's going to be clerking for a dear friend of ours who's the district attorney for...
Richie the B.
Yeah, Richie B. He's a district attorney for Maryland. And Richie B., his story is a God thing. And so he works in the cocaine division, and because he used to be a cocaine dealer.
As well he should.
As well he should. He's part of the Mexican gang and the whole night. It's a God thing. So my son's going to clerk for him. And so Richie B said, to my son, we were in his office, he says, here's a law book. He says, I need you to open up to this page. You just caught somebody who's a second offense. You just got an ounce of pot. What are you going to do with them? My son went in the law book. He read it. He goes, okay, I get it. He says, but what is an ounce of pot? And Richie B looked at me. He goes, is this kid kidding me?
This kid's really yours?
He's never done drugs. You know what I mean? I've been bringing him to AA meetings since he was 3. When we'd be in like a Catholic church and we'd say the Lord's Prayer, he goes, meeting, makers make it. And I'm like, no. Or else, and to this day, we give out little trinkets. You give out cakes. I like that better. We get little gifts, little trinkets, showing our years of sobriety. And I remember when I got my first year of sobriety, they were 4 and 3, and I gave them each one. I was like, this is for Daddy being good. It's got big AA on it. And they ran around to the whole freaking neighborhood saying, look what my daddy gave me. He's being good. It says Alcoholics Anonymous. My anonymity was just blowing out the window. And even my younger one, who struggles a little bit, is just not into the drug or drinking scene. And I think it's because my communication with them, my love with them, and I stayed all over them. And I think if we show that kind of love and caring to our children, some will stray. I mean, there's not much we can do about it. But the chances of that are, probably less than average. So it just comes back to responsibility. Thank you. It was educational, but also entertaining. And I bet you if we were to say the entertaining, my buddy here, Chris, in the educational would be me. Chris said he was calling me, it started, I think, in Denmark, where he was calling me the tacticianer or the technical guy. Chris has the great stories. And as Jim pointed out on the boat, he had the great voice because it was funny. We were driving along, and Jim was on his boat going along, and all of a sudden Chris did the voice of Chris, and like he almost stopped the boat. He goes, "You're that guy!" Like he's this rock star. So Chris is definitely that guy.
Here's one. It says, Chris, did you marry after you stopped taking hostages? That's beautiful. When boy meets girl on AA campus, trouble soon follows. I've got personal experience with that. I was sober about 2.5 years, and I met my second wife, and I married her. And we had a good year there, and that was pretty good. And here's basically what I did, though. Listen. I was all about the business of practicing spiritual principles. So I can say this honestly, and Doug can probably vouch for me.
He's up for statehood.
I kept throwing spiritual principles at this relationship, and throwing them. And finally, about 13 years into this marriage, it started to get violent. I started to become attacked by this individual. And that was the defining point. And I went to my sponsor and I said Gary, what should I do? What should I do? He goes, I don't tell you what to do, but I will ask you a question. And I go, okay, what is that, Gary? He goes, let's forget about you. Is it in her best interest for you to stay in this relationship? I want you to think about that. And I went into some serious meditation and prayer about this particular situation. And I came to the conclusion that, I was making it possible for the continuation of some serious dysfunction. And I left. And that was after a number of years with this person. I got word about 4 months ago that after 25 years in AA, this woman is drinking. After 25 years, this is my ex-wife. That kind of caused me some consternation because we still owned a bunch of property together and stuff. I was like, oh no. But she seems to be doing okay with it. Who knows? But here's what happened. I'm separated from her, and everybody in here is probably aware of Facebook and what Facebook is like. And I started using Facebook early on to find people that I had not been able to find in a long time to make amends to clean up some amends. But as I'm going through one of the people who I went through high school with, and I'm just checking out his friends, and all of a sudden I see Andrea Stankite. Now, Andrea and I were really good friends in high school. She was like 4 years younger than me, so we really liked each other. But there was never any intimacy because I was a scumbag. But at that point in time, somebody 19 is just not going to get involved with somebody who's 14. It just would not have been a good thing. But we were very good friends, and we went to like Led Zeppelin together, and Yes, and Pink Floyd, and we partied like maniacs, and we were very, very close. And then I went off to college, and what happened is, back then there was no cell phones, there was no internet. If you lost track of somebody and they moved a couple of times, they were gone. There was really no way to find them again. And that's what happened. And for years, I was asking people, do you know where Andrea is? People that I would bump into. But my alcoholism was progressing, and my world was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So, fast forward, I'm 20 years sober, and I'm looking through the internet and Facebook, and all of a sudden I see Andrea Stankite. So I type in a little note, hey, Andrea, how's it going? I've been looking for you for like 30 years. How are you doing? And she sent me a message back, and we decided to get together for coffee, and we get together for coffee, and we're living together in 2 months, and we're married within a year. And, I've got to tell you that the one part of my life that wasn't what I would call sober or recovered was my intimate life, because I had to throw spiritual principles at a dysfunctional, nightmare, like continually. Today I can honestly say I'm like Doug. I adore my wife. I mean, we come from a place where we were best friends in childhood. It was like going home, getting together with this person. And there's more than marriage and being a lover. There's being a friend and really trusting and really wanting to be with this person. And so it took me a number of years to get this piece of the puzzle right. But I can honestly say that, today that piece of the puzzle is right. And I am with the right person. She may not be totally convinced that she is. Because I can be a little wacky, if you can imagine, and I'm not always right on the beam, but I'm beyond happy at the same time, and it's not about a hostage situation. It's more about what can I do for you, how can I make you happy, and that's really what I'm trying to do.
And that leads us perfect into the final ending of this, which I'd like to challenge everybody for. Chris's new wife is just so wonderful. My wife and I love hanging out with them, and sometimes they'll come to some events that are fairly large, where Chris and I will be at, and you can just see them just staring at us like, with this glow, like, that's my crazy husband up there, and I think they really appreciate all we do, and we love hanging out with you and your wife, and look forward to seeing you next week in New Jersey. So how do you get to this perfection, as I call it? Well, first thing, you have to believe that the universe will provide you what you desire. That's the first thing you have to believe in. If not, I'm going to ask you not even to start this thing that we're about ready to do. So my sponsor challenged me. I think I had about 2 years sobriety, maybe, and he says, I want you to write down the top 10 things that would make. And so what I would like you to do is to take your list here, and if you would, go on the back. And I want you to copy this right here. And so, as you can see, the left side says work, the right side says love. And I want you to write numbers 1 through 10 with lines going through both. Okay? So it's work at the top, and then the other side is going to be love. And then just make lines across. All right? You can even do it. You know, you're young. Now, as I believe in business, if you can start off with the end in mind, then you can start a path to get to the end, correct? Well, the same thing is here. So I started getting into the spirituality. I got my spiritual awakening. Like Chris, who has continued on with this, and I did not continue on with it. I lasted for about 5 years. I read every spiritual book that was out there, everything, the Bible, the Quran, the 89 things of the Buddhists. I can't pronounce it, or 88. So I just read everything. I was a sponge. I wanted to learn, and I came up with this My God thing. So I got My God, and it actually came in a book from a sponsor who's still not sober to this day. Who actually I found in my office, drunk with a gallon of vodka, and I called the cops on him. But he helped me find my God, right? So it came from a book of Conversations with God, book 1. Conversations with God, book 1. It changed my life. And so I started believing as this book, this God was talking about free will, and he says, why would I give you, 10 commandments in which you'll never be able to pass, and say, but you got free will, but if you don't do this, you're going to hell. But you got free will, if you don't do that, right? He said, I called it the 10 commitments, the commitments I had to you. And he changed the wordage around it. Was really phenomenal, And I started getting this, oh my God, I'm on this CD disc, and I can do anything I want within the CD disc. And there's a trillion, billion, trillion ways that I can turn my life. But with free will, I have to take the responsibilities for my action. So that means I have to be a grown-up. Right? So the situation that I'm in, I caused. Somehow, some way, I caused the situation that I'm in. The good news is I can change that situation anytime I want. And I did. So what he did is he had me put down work. And he said, I want you to design your perfect job. Now, I'm an airline captain flying 11 days a month, making a lot of money, throwing up every time I got to go to work. I hated it. I found out I didn't like flying airplanes. I'm not good as a captain of an airline. I think you wouldn't want me up front, right? I didn't like it. I hated it, right? But when everyone starts calling you crazy and calling your mother saying, are you crazy? You're crazy? Or you want to leave? And I stayed in there till I just couldn't take it anymore, and then I just retired because I had enough years because I got on very young. But when I did that, he said, you need to believe and you need to love yourself enough to believe that this will come. Be patient, Mr. ADD. Be patient. But this will come, and you work towards this. And some of the things I wrote down was teaching. I wrote down helping others. I wrote down international speaker. Right? I wrote down. I wanted to live in Washington. I wrote down. I wanted to be self-employed with employees. I got a little carried away with employees. I got 1,000 of them now, but whatever. And then I went down the whole list. And do you know, about a year ago I was in Singapore speaking at the Entrepreneur Organization International event in Singapore. And I was about 2,000 people were there. And I'm up on stage and I'm doing my gig, backflips, making people laugh. And I stopped. And it seemed like about 9 hours, but ADD is probably about 5 seconds. And I looked at everybody and I said, oh my God, that was the last thing that I had, and it was done. I have achieved all 10. Okay? The next thing I did is he had me write out the love of my life, right? And I wrote out, of course, and it's funny when I have women do it and when I have guys do it. The guys are the top 4 is the look, right? Always. Top 4 is the look. The women, the top 4 is sensitivity. It's it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Mine was the look, right? And I wrote the top 10 down. One of the things I did not want was the person that I desired to have children. I didn't want that because I had 2 kids, right? And I was afraid it would take away from my children, and I didn't want that. So my wife was 9 out of 10. She's actually 10 out of 10 because her and her son, I met him when he was 5, he's 17, we're like this. He's just the best kid in the world. He's a really cool kid. And so my wife is 10 out of 10. Now what I would do is I would take this and I would hang it up on the mirror, and then I would rate the person that I was seeing at the time after about 30 days. Because we're always on our best behavior for the first 30 days. Right? You ever meet a jerk in a week? Well, I hope not. Right? But, so we're on the best behavior. Then if it didn't reach up to at least a 6 out of the 10, then I would lovingly go to them and say, I really don't think this is going anywhere. Unless you just want to hang out, I'm good, right? But some days thinking it'll change me, which it doesn't. But when I met my wife, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. She was right off the boat, Italy. She was European. I met her on my airplane when she was going to Rome, and she didn't give me her telephone number. And 3 years later, I was doing a deal financing this IT company in Washington, D.C., and I told him I needed to talk to some of his employees, and she came walking in. She had moved to America, and she saw a picture of me in my pilot uniform on the wall in an airplane. She looked at me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, everyone's they're talking like this, and numbers are flat, and I'm hearing wah, 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 and I'm just like staring at her. And I'm like, where have I seen you before? Because she had been up to my cockpit, because my flight attendant pulled a prank on me when I said, that chick is hot. And she sent her up to the flight deck. Back then, you could do that without being shot. So I told her, this airplane's not going to Rome, Italy, unless you give me your telephone number. And she smiled and walked away. And they were like, yo, dude, God, what happened? I'm like, I shouldn't speak English. She's like, oh, I was just talking to her. She speaks great English. So anyway, she looked at me. She goes, oh, my God, El Capitano. And I heard the Italian accent. I was just like, yeah. And I'm like, Miss Italy. And it was funny because at the same time, my financial officer, chief financial officer, was saying, "Well, we're not going to fund that company." At the same time, I'm like, "Well, we're funding that company." He's like, "No, we're not funding that company." I'm like, "No, we are funding that company." He said, "They'll be out of business in 120 days." I'm like, "No, probably 90." And he's like, "You're after the guinea." And I'm like, "You're right." And I funded the company, and they went out of business in 90 days. And so I told my wife, "Come work for me." She's like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. We'll figure something out." Yeah, and she's been with us ever since, and we work together and hang out together and pray and meditate together, and we work out together. It's an unbelievable relationship. Unbelievable relationship. If you can go from love to adoring, it's a totally different level. And so what I did is I put it up on the wall, and when I met her, I took it down. So I said, this is it. This is the one. And she's 10 out of 10. So what I would like you to do today, if you would for me, just for a little while, and we could put on some meditation music or whatever. That does sound like a good idea. And I want you to fill out these 2, and I really want you to be honest. If it's the look you want, the tiny little, the big little, the butt, that's fine. Whatever. We're not going to judge. I just want you to fill out the person you want to fall in love with, the perfect husband. And then I want you to fill out the perfect job. Feel it, touch it. What office is it in? My office, I remember, I'm into history like Chris. I wanted my office to be really cool. My office is Thomas Jefferson's library. Thomas Jefferson was our 3rd president in the United States. How cool is that? And I've had that since 2000. So I want you to feel it. What do your employees look like? What is it? Where is it? Where are you living? Are you living here? Or, and you want to keep your skin beautiful because there's no sun? Or, just say that out loud. Or do you want to live on an island for 3 months or 5 months, like my friend Jim? But I want you to do the work. I really do. And then I want you to do the love. Now, when you do the love, I don't want you to judge yourself. I really don't want you to judge yourself. Okay? I want you to just mark, if you are with somebody, just, you don't have to do it now, you can do it later, but mark if they're a part of that. All right? So I found out that when I was with my wife, first wife, I married a flight attendant. Did I tell you that? Imagine that. I married a flight attendant. She's my dearest friend. She's my dearest friend, and our kids are so healthy. And her and I just celebrated my son's graduation. She comes to all my openings of new stuff that I do. And she was 2 out of 10. She was 2 out of 10. But she's my best friend. She's a great friend, but she was 2 out of 10. My wife today is 10 out of 10. Totally different. Totally different level. Okay? So I want you to start doing this. So ready? Go.